Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. Have you ever lived with someone and slowly realized they were afraid of something they refused to explain? Not afraid in a normal way. Not like someone scared of bugs or storms or being alone at night. I mean afraid like they had already seen how bad things could get, and now they were just waiting for it to happen again. My name is Leah Mercer. I'm 24 now, but this happened when I was 19, during my second year of college in Columbus, Ohio. I was studying nursing at the time, which meant my life was mostly classes, labs, clinical paperwork, caffeine, and trying not to cry in my car between shifts at a diner. I didn't come from money. My parents helped when they could, but my dad had been laid off that year, and my mom was picking up extra hours at a pharmacy. So when my dorm costs went up, I had to find somewhere cheaper off campus. That's how I ended up in apartment 3B. It was in an old brick building about 12 minutes from campus, wedged between a laundromat and a little Mexican grocery store. The place had 3 floors, no elevator, narrow hallways, and that old apartment smell of radiator heat, dust, and somebody always cooking onions. The rent was low enough that I ignored the water stains in the ceiling, the buzzing lights in the stairwell, and the fact that the front entrance didn't always lock unless you pulled it hard. The apartment itself was small but decent. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a galley kitchen, and a living room with scratched wood floors. My room faced the alley, which wasn't ideal, but it had a big window and enough space for a bed, desk, and plastic dresser. My roommate's name was Mara. She was 22, a senior, and already lived there when I moved in. I found the listing on a campus housing group. It just said, room available near campus. Quiet apartment. No parties. No overnight guests. Must be okay with odd schedule. At the time, that sounded perfect. I didn't want a party apartment. I didn't care if my roommate worked nights or slept weird hours. I just needed somewhere safe enough to study and cheap enough to survive. When I first met Mara, she seemed normal. Quiet, but not rude. She had short dark hair, pale skin, and these tired eyes that made her look older than she was. She wore oversized sweaters even though it was still warm out, and she kept one earbud in like she was always half listening to something. She showed me around the apartment in about 5 minutes. That's your room, she said. Bathroom shared. Don't use the left burner on the stove unless you want the smoke alarm to scream. Mailboxes are downstairs. Laundry's in the basement, but I don't use it at night. Got it, I said. Then she pointed at the front door. There are 2 locks. Use both. I nodded. Okay. I mean it, she said. That was the first time I noticed something off in her face. Her voice didn't get louder, but it got flat. Serious. I will, I told her. She stared at me for another second, then looked away like she regretted saying anything. The first week was fine. Honestly, it was almost boring. Mara kept to herself. She had classes during the day, worked some kind of remote job in the evenings, and spent most of her time in her bedroom with the door closed. We weren't friends, exactly, but we were polite. We'd say good morning. We'd share dish soap. Sometimes we'd stand in the kitchen at the same time making food and have those awkward roommate conversations about weather, rent, or how bad the parking was. The only thing that struck me as strange was her routine. Every night, she stayed in her room until midnight. I don't mean she usually happened to come out around midnight. I mean exactly midnight. At 12 o'clock, her door would open. She would walk down the short hallway into the kitchen, fill the same glass with water, drink half of it, then stand in the living room facing the front door. Not doing anything, not checking her phone, not stretching, just standing there. She would stare at the door for 10 minutes. Then she'd finish the water, rinse the glass, put it upside down in the dish rack, and go back to her room. The first time I saw it, I thought she was sleepwalking. It was my 3rd night in the apartment. I had fallen asleep on the couch with a textbook open on my chest and woke up to the sound of a floorboard creaking. The living room was dark except for the orange glow from the streetlight leaking through the blinds. Mara was standing near the kitchen entrance, facing the front door. She didn't move. I sat up slowly. "Mara?" She lifted one finger to her lips. Not dramatically, just enough to tell me to be quiet. I remember feeling embarrassed, like I had interrupted something private. I whispered, "Sorry," and went to my room. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. I brought it up while she was making coffee. "Hey, were you sleepwalking last night?" She stopped stirring her cup. "No." "Oh, sorry. I just saw you standing by the door." She looked at me, and I could tell she was deciding whether to explain. Then she said, "I check it every night." "The lock?" "Kind of." I waited, but she didn't say anything else. So I laughed a little, trying to make it less weird. "I get it. This building is sketchy." She didn't laugh. "Yeah," she said. "It is." After that, I started noticing it every night. I'd be in my room studying, and at exactly midnight, I'd hear her door open. Then the glass. Then the silence. Sometimes I'd peek through my cracked bedroom door and see her standing in the same spot, shoulders slightly tense, eyes fixed on the front door like she expected someone to come through it. I told myself it was nothing. People have habits. People have anxiety. College makes everybody weird in different ways. I had a classmate who ate dry cereal out of a coffee mug during lectures. Another girl in my anatomy lab taped flashcards to the ceiling above her bed. Mara standing by the door for 10 minutes every night was odd, sure, but it didn't hurt me. At least, that's what I thought. The first real off moment happened about 2 weeks after I moved in. It was a Thursday night. Rain had been coming down all day, that cold early October rain that makes everything smell like wet pavement and dead leaves. I got home from work around 11:30, exhausted and smelling like fryer oil. Mara's bedroom door was closed as usual. I showered, changed, and was brushing my hair in the bathroom when I heard something outside the apartment. A soft scraping sound. I paused with the brush halfway through my hair. The bathroom was right beside the front door, so I could hear the hallway pretty clearly. There it was again. Scrape. Like something being dragged lightly along the door. I stepped out of the bathroom and looked toward the living room. The apartment was dim. I had only left the kitchen light on. Rain tapped against the windows. Somewhere upstairs, a pipe knocked. Then the front doorknob turned. Slowly. Not a jiggle. Not someone bumping into it by mistake. It turned from the outside, stopped against the lock, and held there. My skin tightened. "Mara?" I whispered. Her door opened immediately. She was already dressed, like she hadn't been sleeping at all. Sweatpants, gray hoodie, bare feet. Her face looked blank, but her eyes went straight to the knob. It turned again. Mara stepped into the living room and whispered, "Go to your room." "What?" "Go to your room." "Is someone there?" She didn't answer. The clock on the microwave changed to 12 o'clock. The doorknob stopped moving. Mara walked to the kitchen, filled the glass with water, and stood facing the front door. I stayed frozen in the hallway. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The only sounds were rain, the refrigerator humming, and my own breathing. At 12:10, Mara drank the rest of the water and put the glass in the sink. Then she looked at me and said, "Don't talk to anyone through the door after 11. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means don't." I wanted to argue. I wanted to ask who had been trying the door. But she walked back into her room and shut it before I could say anything else. The next day, I asked the landlord about the front entrance lock. His name was Mr. Colby. He was a short man in his 50s with a red face, a stained polo shirt, and the permanent attitude of someone who thought every tenant was trying to scam him. He lived off-site but came by most mornings to check the building, which seemed to mean smoking near the trash bins and complaining about recycling. I caught him by the mailboxes. "Someone tried our apartment door last night," I said. He barely looked up from his phone. "Probably someone drunk on the wrong floor." "At midnight?" "It's a college neighborhood. The front door doesn't lock right either." He sighed like I had asked him to rebuild the whole building. "You gotta pull it shut." "I do. It still sticks." "I'll look at it." He did not look at it. That night, I put a chair under our front door handle. Mara saw it when she came out at midnight. For the first time since I moved in, she almost smiled. "That won't stop him," she said. My stomach tightened. "Him?" She looked at the door. "I said it won't stop anything." "No, you said him." She didn't reply. "Mara, who is he?" The silence that followed felt too long. Finally, she said, "Someone who used to live here." "In this apartment?" "In the building." "Okay. Is he dangerous?" She took a drink of water. "Not if you don't give him a reason to be interested." That sentence made me angry, mostly because I was scared. "Are you serious? Someone tried our door last night, and you're acting like this is normal?" Her jaw tightened. "I didn't say it was normal." "Then tell me what's going on." She looked at me, and for a second she seemed younger. Not mysterious, not creepy, just tired. "Before you moved in, I had another roommate," she said quietly. "Her name was Jenna." I waited. She thought I was paranoid too. "What happened to her?" Mara turned back to the door. "She moved out." The way she said it made me not believe her. Over the next few days, small things started happening. Nothing big enough to call the police over. Nothing that would sound serious if I tried to explain it to someone else. Just little things that made the apartment feel less like mine. The first was a note in our mailbox. It was folded once, with no envelope. On the outside, someone had written, 3B. Inside, in block letters, it said, "Welcome, Leah." I stood in the lobby holding it, reading my name over and over. My name was not on the mailbox yet. I had not introduced myself to anyone in the building except Mara and Mr. Colby. When I showed Mara, she stared at it for a long time. Then she took it from my hand and dropped it into the kitchen trash. "Hey," I said, "maybe we should keep that." "For what?" "I don't know." "Proof. Proof that someone knows your name?" "Yes." She gave me a look that made me feel childish. "You signed a lease. Your name is in the office. Your mail comes here. People can find names." I knew that was true. That was the problem with everything. Each thing had an explanation if you wanted badly enough to find one. The second thing happened 2 nights later. I came home from class and found a white plastic grocery bag hanging on our door handle. Inside was a bottle of the cheap peach iced tea I bought every morning from the corner store, a pack of gum, and a receipt with the time stamp circled. 12 a.m. I hadn't bought it. Mara was sitting at the kitchen table when I brought it in. She looked at the bag and went pale. "Where was that?" "On the door. Don't touch anything else." I set the bag on the counter. "What is this?" She stood up, grabbed a pair of dish gloves from under the sink, picked up the bag, and shoved it into another trash bag. "Mara, he watches patterns." The room went quiet. "What?" She froze, realizing what she had said. "He." She tied the trash bag tightly. "I'm calling the police," I said. She turned fast. "No, no, they won't do anything. Someone is leaving things at our door." "And what will you say?" "A tea and gum scared you." "It's stalking. It's not enough." "How do you know?" She looked away, and that was the first moment I understood something important. This wasn't beginning with me. I had walked into the middle of it. I called my older brother instead. His name is Ryan, and at the time he lived about 30 minutes away. He had always been protective in a normal, annoying big brother way. When I told him what was happening, he drove over that evening. Mara clearly did not like having him there. Ryan checked the door, the windows, the hallway, the stairwell, and the alley outside my bedroom. He brought one of those cheap door alarm kits from Walmart and installed it on our front door. He also put a little stick-on sensor on my bedroom window. "This building is garbage," he said. "I know. Move." I signed a lease. "Break it." "With what money?" He didn't have an answer. Mara stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching him work. At one point, Ryan asked her, "Has this happened before?" She said, "No." I stared at her. She didn't look at me. Before he left, Ryan told me to call him if anything else happened. He also made me promise to keep my phone charged and sleep with my door locked. That night, I felt safer. Not completely safe, but safer. The front door had an alarm now. The chair was still under the handle. Both locks were fastened. I even pushed my desk in front of my bedroom window. which was probably pointless, but it made me feel better. I went to bed around 10:30. At 11:59, I woke up because someone was standing beside my bed. I didn't scream at first. My mind couldn't catch up to what my eyes were seeing. Mara stood there in the dark, right next to my mattress, looking down at me. Her face was barely visible in the bluish light from my phone charger. Her hair hung loose around her face. She was breathing fast. I sat up, so suddenly my shoulder hit the wall. What the hell? She put her hand over my mouth. That's when I did try to scream. She leaned close and whispered, "Don't open the door tonight. It knows you're new." I shoved her hand away. "Get out of my room. Listen to me. Get out." Then the door alarm beeped. Once. Not the full screaming alarm. Just the small chirp it made when the sensor separated for half a second. Both of us froze. From the living room, the front doorknob turned. Slowly. The chair under it creaked. Mara looked toward my bedroom door. Her lips moved silently, counting. The microwave clock in the kitchen beeped as it changed to midnight. Then someone knocked on the front door. 3 soft knocks. Mara's eyes filled with tears. Not loud crying, not dramatic, just tears sliding down her face while she stared at my door. The knock came again, 3 times. Then a man's voice said, "Leah?" My blood went cold. It wasn't Ryan. It wasn't Mr. Colby. It wasn't any voice I recognized. It was calm, friendly almost. "Leah, it's okay. Mara told me you'd be here." I looked at Mara. She shook her head violently. The man outside said, "I'm maintenance. There's been a gas leak reported in your unit. I need you to open the door." I almost moved. That's the part one hate admitting, because it sounded reasonable, serious, adult. The kind of thing you don't ignore because you're scared and young and don't want to seem stupid. Mara grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt. "No," she mouthed. The man knocked again. "Leah, open the door." My phone was under my pillow. I reached for it slowly. The floor creaked in the living room. Not outside. Inside. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me in my mind, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That was the feeling, even with Mara beside me. The apartment that had felt small and cheap suddenly felt enormous, full of corners I couldn't see. I whispered, "Is he inside?" Mara didn't answer. Another floorboard creaked. This one was closer. The hallway outside my bedroom was dark. I could see the thin gap under my door. A shadow crossed it, slowly. Someone was between my bedroom and the front door. Mara pulled me off the bed and pointed to the closet. I shook my head. She mouthed, "Now." I don't know why I listened. Maybe because her fear was so real. Maybe because some part of me understood that she had survived this before. We squeezed into my closet, behind hanging clothes and laundry bags. Mara pulled the sliding door almost shut, leaving a narrow crack. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled to silence my phone. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. My bedroom door opened. Slowly. No alarm. No creak. Just the soft push of the door. Someone stepped inside. I could only see from the knees down at first. Dark pants. Work boots. The kind with dried mud in the treads. He stood at the foot of my bed. The room was silent except for Mara's shaky breathing beside me. I pressed my hand over my own mouth. The man took one step closer, then another. He leaned down, and through the crack in the closet door, I saw part of his face. He was older than I expected, maybe late 30s, early 40s. Thin face, patchy beard, baseball cap pulled low. His expression was not angry. That was somehow worse. He looked calm, patient, like he had done this enough times to know the ending. He lifted my blanket, saw the bed was empty. For a second, he didn't move. Then he smiled, not wide, just enough. He whispered, "New girl?" Mara's nails dug into my arm. The man straightened and turned toward the closet. I thought I was going to pass out. Then the front door alarm exploded. That cheap little sensor Ryan installed started shrieking through the apartment. The man flinched. From the hallway, Mara's phone began ringing on the kitchen counter. The ringtone was loud and cheerful, completely wrong for the moment. The man turned his head. Mara shoved the closet door open and screamed, "Run!" Everything after that happened messily. Not like a movie. Not clean. I tripped over shoes, slammed my shoulder into the doorframe, and almost fell in the hallway. Mara grabbed my hoodie and dragged me toward the front door. The man lunged after us, and I heard his boots hit the floor behind me. The chair was still jammed under the handle, but the front door was open a few inches. The chain lock had been cut. I saw it hanging broken, swinging against the wood. Mara kicked the chair away. I couldn't get the deadbolt open because my hands wouldn't work. "Move," she shouted. She reached around me, flipped the lock, and yanked the door open. The hallway outside was empty. We ran. I don't remember the stairs clearly. I remember the smell of old carpet, the buzzing light on the second floor landing, my socks slipping on the edge of a step, Mara crying without making noise, the alarm still screaming upstairs. Behind us, the man shouted something. Not our names, just one word. "Wait!" That scared me more than if he had screamed threats. We burst out the front entrance into the cold. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. There were parked cars, wet pavement, a blinking traffic light at the corner, the neon sign from the laundromat buzzing red and blue, and a white van parked directly in front of the building. Its side door was open. I saw blankets inside, a toolbox, rolls of tape, a plastic storage bin. Mara saw it too. She whispered, "Don't stop." We ran across the street to the Mexican grocery, but it was closed. Metal gate pulled down, lights off. I banged on the glass anyway. No one came. Mara pulled me toward the laundromat. It was open 24 hours. Inside, 2 dryers were spinning, and an old man in a brown coat sat in a plastic chair reading a newspaper. He looked up as we stumbled in barefoot and crying. "Call 911, Mara gasped. The man stood immediately. I locked myself in the laundromat bathroom and called my brother with shaking hands. I could barely speak. I just kept saying, he was inside. He was inside the apartment. Police arrived within minutes, though it felt longer. Ryan got there before they even finished taking our statements. He came in wearing sweatpants, a coat, and no socks, like he had just shoved on shoes and driven. When he saw me, he hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. Then he saw Mara and said, "What the hell is going on?" She didn't answer. She was sitting in a plastic chair by the vending machine, staring at the floor. The police searched apartment 3B. The man was gone. The white van was gone. They found our front door damaged. The chain had been cut with bolt cutters. The deadbolt showed tool marks. My bedroom door was open. My closet door was open. The window alarm had been removed and placed neatly on my desk. They also found something under my bed, a small black camera. It had been taped to the underside of the bed frame, angled toward the room. I threw up in the laundromat trash when they told me. That was when Mara finally started talking. Her previous roommate, Jenna, had not simply moved out. Jenna had been stalked. It started with small things. Notes, items left outside the door, someone calling her name through the hallway. Then she started saying she heard someone inside the apartment at night. Mara thought Jenna was spiraling, stressed from school, maybe paranoid. One night, Mara woke up at midnight and found Jenna standing at the front door, hand on the lock, talking softly to someone outside. The voice sounded like Jenna's boyfriend, but her boyfriend was out of state visiting family. Mara pulled her away from the door, and the person outside left. After that, Mara started doing the midnight routine. Water door 10 minutes. She said it helped her stay awake during the time he usually came. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked her later, while we sat wrapped in police blankets in the back of an ambulance. She looked destroyed. Because every time I tell someone, they think I'm crazy. What happened to Jenna? Mara wiped her face with the heel of her hand. She left. She really did. She moved back home. I wanted to believe that. Then she added, but she stopped answering me a month later. The man was not caught that night. The police found out the van had stolen plates. The name he gave through the door, maintenance, was fake. Mr. Colby swore no repairman had been sent. Of course, he also swore the building entrance lock worked fine, so nobody believed him much. But the camera under my bed changed things. That made it real. That made it evidence. Officers searched the apartment more carefully and found 2 more devices. One in the living room vent and one behind the outlet plate in the bathroom. That sentence still makes my skin crawl. They found scratches around the lock on Mara's bedroom window, even though we were on the 3rd floor. They found mud on the fire escape outside. They found a cigarette, but on the landing outside our back window. And in the basement laundry room, behind an old dryer that didn't work, they found a duffel bag. Inside were women's clothes, a pair of work gloves, zip ties, old student IDs, and printed photos. Some of the photos were of Jenna. Some were of Mara. 3 were of me. One showed me walking from the bus stop in my diner uniform, head down, earbuds in. Another showed me standing in the grocery aisle buying peach iced tea. The last one was taken from the alley behind the apartment. It showed my bedroom window. Light on. Me inside, unpacking boxes on my first day. On the back, someone had written, "New one." I don't think I felt fear properly until that moment. Before, it had been panic, shock, survival. But seeing that photo, seeing proof that I had been chosen before I even understood there was a choice being made, did something permanent to me. It made the whole world feel unsafe in a way I had never experienced. The police questioned Mr. Colby for hours. At first, I thought he might be involved. He had keys. He ignored complaints. He acted annoyed instead of concerned. But from what I understand, they never found enough to charge him with anything serious. Negligence, maybe. Being a terrible landlord, definitely. But not the stalking. The person they focused on was a former tenant named Aaron Vale. He had lived in 1C 2 years earlier. He had done odd maintenance jobs for Colby in exchange for reduced rent. Painting, lock repairs, cleaning empty units. He would have known the building. He would have known how to get through the basement. He may have had old keys or copies. He had been evicted after complaints from 2 female tenants. One said he stood too close in the hallway. One said she found him outside her door at night. Neither had enough proof. That phrase came up a lot. Not enough proof. Until there was. The problem was, Aaron Vale had disappeared months before I moved in. No current address. No registered car. No job anyone could find. Police believed he was still in the area, living out of the van, getting into the building through the basement or fire escape when he could. They searched for him. They put out a notice. They showed us photos. The man in the photos looked like the man in my room, but thinner. His beard was different. His hair was longer. Still, I knew those eyes. Calm. Empty. Unrushed. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the closet door. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I moved out the next morning. I didn't pack properly. I didn't care about dishes, towels, half my clothes, or the cheap bookshelf I had just bought. Ryan and 2 of his friends went with me during the day and grabbed what mattered. My laptop, documents, a few boxes, my textbooks. Everything else stayed. Mara moved too. For a few weeks, she stayed with a cousin. We texted a little, mostly practical things about the lease and police updates. But after a while, she stopped responding as much. Not in a rude way. More like she was trying to disappear from the version of her life where any of this had happened. I understood. I did the same thing. I transferred apartments, changed my class schedule, quit the diner, stopped walking with earbuds in, stopped posting where I was online. I checked under beds and inside closets like a crazy person. I bought a doorbell camera even though my new apartment was inside a locked building. I slept with lights on for months. People tried to comfort me in ways that didn't help. You're safe now. He's probably gone. At least nothing worse happened. That last one always made me angry, though I know they meant well. Because something worse did happen. Something inside me changed. I used to think being safe was a normal state. Something you had unless danger appeared. Now I know safety is something you build, and even then, it's not guaranteed. About 8 months later, I got a call from Detective Harris, the officer assigned to the case. They had found the van. It was abandoned behind a closed auto shop near the edge of town. Cleaned out mostly. No errand, no weapon, no clear evidence of where he went. But in the glove compartment, they found a small notebook. Most of it was nonsense. Addresses, times, initials, little observations about people in the building. But one page had apartment numbers listed with names beside them. 3B Mara. Under that, new girl Leah. Responds to authority. Works late. Brother visits. Scared but curious. I read that line in the detective's office and felt like the floor had tilted. Scared but curious. That was exactly right. That was what almost got me killed or taken or whatever he had planned. I kept wanting to understand. I kept asking questions. I kept treating danger like a mystery I could solve if I just looked hard enough. Detective Harris also told me something else. They had reached Jenna, Mara's old roommate. She was alive, living with her parents in Michigan. She confirmed everything Mara had said and more. She said the night she finally left, someone had called her from outside the apartment using her father's voice. Her father had died when she was 15. That detail never made it into any police report I saw. The detective said Aaron probably used recordings from social media videos, voicemails, old clips, anything he could find. Maybe he had hacked accounts. Maybe he had recorded people in the apartment. Maybe Jenna only thought it sounded exactly like her dad because she was terrified. That was the practical explanation. I accepted it because I needed to. But I still wonder. Because the voice that said my name through the door that night did not sound like a recording. It sounded present, aware, like it knew when I shifted under the covers, like it knew Mara had her hand over my mouth. A year after it happened, I ran into Mara at a coffee shop near campus. I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was longer, and she looked healthier in some ways, but she still had that watchful look. Like part of her attention was always measuring exits. We sat outside for 10 minutes and talked. Not about school. Not much about life. Mostly about that apartment. I asked her if she still did the midnight routine. She looked embarrassed. Sometimes. Water and everything? She nodded. I do something like that too, I admitted. She looked relieved that I understood. Then she told me something she had never told the police. On my first night in 3B, before I moved all my boxes in, she found a note slipped under the front door. It said, "Does she sleep heavy?" Mara said she almost called me and told me not to come. Why didn't you? I meant it gently, but she flinched anyway. I needed rent, she said. That answer hurt because it was honest. For a second, I hated her. Then I didn't, because I understood that too. Fear and money make people do things they don't feel proud of. She had been drowning before I arrived, and I had climbed into the same sinking boat because it was cheap. Before we left, Mara said, he liked new people because they didn't know the rules. That sentence stayed with me. New people don't know which hallway lights are supposed to flicker. They don't know which neighbor never says hello. They don't know the difference between an old building noise and a hand on the doorknob. They don't know to keep quiet when someone uses their name. I graduated eventually. I became a nurse. I have a normal life now, or as normal as I can make it. I have friends. I go to work. I pay bills. I still buy peach iced tea sometimes, though not from corner stores near apartments. But I don't live with roommates anymore. I don't rent ground floor or alley-facing rooms. I don't ignore cheap locks. And every night before bed, I check the door at least twice. Sometimes, when I wake up close to midnight, I still imagine Mara standing in the living room with her glass of water, staring at the door for 10 minutes because that was the window of time when something might come looking. The worst part is, Aaron Vale was never caught. Not officially. A few years later, Detective Harris called to tell me there had been a possible sighting in Kentucky, then another in Indiana. Nothing confirmed. Men like that know how to disappear because they spend their whole lives watching other people, learning routines, finding weak locks. waiting for someone new. I've tried not to let it rule my life, but there are things I can't unlearn. When someone knocks late, I don't answer right away. When maintenance comes, I call the office first. When a voice says my name from the other side of a door, I check the peephole, the camera, the chain, and my phone before I even think about turning the lock. And if I ever wake up at 11:59 and see someone standing beside my bed again, I know one thing for sure. I'll listen before I scream, because sometimes the person scaring you is not the real danger. Sometimes they're the only one who knows the rules. Story 2. Next stop, the speaker said, in that flat subway voice that always sounds half asleep. Where you were supposed to die. That was the first time in my life I genuinely forgot how to breathe. Not held my breath, forgot. Because by then, the train had already blown past 5 stations without slowing down. Every tunnel light outside the windows was streaking by like we were moving too fast, and every piece of glass around me was showing people who weren't actually there. I know how that sounds. I know this sounds like something somebody made up after watching too many late-night horror videos, or one of those stories people tell on Reddit to get attention. I wish it was. I've spent years wishing there was some clean explanation for what happened that night. Exhaustion, a panic attack, carbon monoxide, a prank, some malfunction with the train's lighting. Anything. But there are things I saw on that train that nobody could have faked. Things I heard. Things that knew my name. My name is Marcus Reed. I was 28 when this happened, living in Queens, New York, in a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat that shook my floor every time the dryers hit their spin cycle. This was in late November, back when I was working night shifts at a private security desk in Midtown. It wasn't glamorous. I wasn't guarding celebrities or chasing anyone down. Most nights, I sat behind a marble desk in the lobby of an office building and watched camera feeds of empty hallways, elevators, stairwells, and locked glass doors. I signed in cleaning crews. I nodded at lawyers who left at midnight with loosened ties and dead eyes. I drank terrible vending machine coffee and tried not to fall asleep between 2 and 4 a.m. My life was boring in a way I actually liked. I went to work at 8 p.m. I got off at 4 a.m. I walked 2 blocks to the subway, took the same train home, got a bagel from the same guy near my stop, slept until noon, and did it all over again. That routine made me feel safe. You don't realize how much comfort there is in repetition until something breaks it. I always took the last subway home. Technically, it wasn't the absolute last train in the city, but it was the last one that made sense for my route without waiting forever on a platform where the rats outnumbered the people. I knew the timing so well that I could leave work at 4:07, walk past the closed flower stand, down the stairs by the pharmacy, swipe in, and hear the train pulling in before I reached the bottom. Same platform, same stale hot air, same smell of metal dust, old rainwater, and somebody's cold fries. There were usually a few people around at that hour. A nurse in purple scrubs, a guy with a guitar case who slept sitting up, 2 construction workers who always smelled like concrete and cigarettes, sometimes a drunk college kid mumbling into his phone. Sometimes nobody I recognized, but never nobody at all. New York doesn't really do empty. That's why the first strange thing should have bothered me more than it did. It was a Tuesday night, cold but not freezing. The kind of cold that makes your ears ache when the wind comes down the avenue. I remember because I'd forgotten my gloves, and my fingers were stiff when I swiped my Metro card. The turnstile clicked. I went through. The station was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Not normal 4 a.m. quiet. It felt paused. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and somewhere water dripped behind the wall. But there were no voices. No footsteps. No train rumble in the distance. Even the rats were missing, which, if you've ever been in a New York subway station after midnight, is almost more suspicious than seeing a ghost. I stood near the yellow line, hands in my jacket pockets, and checked my phone. 4:16 a.m. No service, of course. The digital board above the platform said, "Downtown train, 1 minute." Then it flickered. The orange letters scrambled for half a second, like someone had shaken them loose. When they came back, it said, Home now. I stared at it. I remember blinking hard, like that would reset my brain. The sign changed again. Downtown train arriving. I actually laughed a little under my breath. Not because it was funny, but because when something weird happens in a normal place, your mind tries to file it under broken equipment as fast as possible. I told myself it was nothing. A glitch. The city was full of glitches. Then I heard the train. At first, it was just a low vibration in the rails. Then the tunnel lit up with those two white headlights, and the wind hit the platform, pushing a newspaper against my shoe. The train came in too smoothly. That's another detail I can't explain well unless you ride subways a lot. Trains usually scream into stations. They complain. They grind. Brakes squeal. Metal shrieks. The whole thing feels like it's barely holding together. This one slid in like it was floating. No screech. No hiss. Just a soft rush of air and silver cars stopping perfectly in front of me. Every car was empty. Completely empty. No sleeping passengers. No backpacks. No bottles rolling around on the floor. No spilled coffee. No ads peeling off the walls. Even the seats looked too clean, like the train had just been washed and sent out for inspection. The doors opened. I stood there for a second. You'd think I would have turned around. You'd think I would have said, nope, and waited for another train, or called a cab, or walked home if I had to. But at 4:18 in the morning, after an 8-hour shift, with cold air on your back in your bed waiting somewhere far away, your brain doesn't act like a horror movie character's brain. It acts like a tired person's brain. Empty train? Great. No one bothering me. So I stepped inside. The doors closed behind me. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. At least, I thought I was. The car was bright, almost painfully bright. The lights buzzed above me. I sat near the middle, facing the doors like I always did. I kept my bag on my lap and leaned my head back against the window. For maybe 30 seconds, everything felt normal. The train pulled away. The tunnel swallowed the platform. The speaker crackled. Next stop, it paused. Usually the announcement would name the station. Instead, there was static. Then silence. I looked up. The route map above the doors was dark. The little red lights that showed the stops were all off, except for one at the far end of the line that kept blinking. Not my stop. Not any stop I recognized. Just a blank space on the map where no station name was printed. I frowned and sat forward. That was when I saw the first reflection. In the window across from me, there was a man sitting 2 seats to my left. Not in the train. In the window. The actual seat beside me was empty. I could see the blue plastic, clean and untouched. But in the glass, reflected against the black tunnel outside, a man sat there with his knees together, hands folded in his lap. He looked maybe 60. Thin face. Dark coat. Gray hair combed flat against his skull. He was staring straight ahead. I turned my head so fast my neck cracked. Empty seat. I looked back at the window. He was still there. I froze. For a few seconds, all I heard was the clacking of the rails beneath the train. I told myself it was another reflection from somewhere else. Maybe a poster. Maybe some weird angle from another car. But the windows on the other side showed more people. A young woman standing by the doors, holding the pole with one hand. An older lady in a green scarf sitting near the end. A little boy kneeling backward on a seat, palms pressed to the glass, looking out into the tunnel. All of them only visible in reflection. When I looked directly at the places where they should have been, there was nothing. Empty car. Empty seats. Empty aisle. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway between cars made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The sound came from the next car. Slow footsteps. Then they stopped. I stood up. That was stupid, I know. But fear makes you do strange things. Sometimes you don't run. Sometimes you investigate, because the unknown feels worse than whatever answer might be waiting. I walked to the door between cars and looked through the small rectangular window. The next car was also empty. No one standing there. No one walking. but its windows were full. Reflections of passengers packed shoulder to shoulder. People sitting, standing, swaying gently with the motion of the train. A whole rush-hour crowd reflected in the glass of an empty subway car. And every single one of them was looking toward me. I stepped back so hard I almost fell. The speaker crackled again. This time, a woman's voice came through. Not the usual recorded voice. This one sounded closer, softer, like someone speaking into an old phone. Please remain seated. I didn't. I grabbed my bag and moved toward the doors. The train was still moving fast, but I had this insane thought that maybe I could force them open at the next station. Then I realized we should have reached the next station already. We should have slowed down at 42nd. We didn't. A blur of lights appeared outside the windows. The station platform rushed past so fast I only caught pieces of it. Tiles, columns, a bench, a dark figure standing under a sign. Then tunnel again. The train didn't slow at all. I stumbled and caught the pole. No, I whispered. No, no, no. The route map above the doors flickered on. All the station names lit up at once, then went black, one by one, like someone was erasing them. The train sped up. The windows began to change. At first, the reflections were just sitting there, silently watching me. Then they started moving. Not like normal passengers. More like people underwater. Slow turns of the head. Slow blinking. A hand lifting and lowering. The little boy in the window across from me pressed his palms harder against the glass, though there was no sound. I backed away until my shoulders hit the doors. That was when I noticed something about them. They weren't dressed from the same time. The man in the dark coat wore a narrow tie like something from the 1960s. The woman near the pole had a Walkman clipped to her belt. The older lady's scarf looked old-fashioned, like my grandmother's church clothes. One guy wore a delivery app jacket that looked new enough to be from that year. Different decades, different people, different deaths. I don't know why that word came to me, but it did. Deaths. The train blew past another station. This time, I saw myself on the platform, just for half a second. I swear on everything I have, I saw myself standing there, in my black security jacket, hands at my sides, watching the train pass. My face was pale. My eyes were wide. Then he was gone. I staggered back into the middle of the car. My phone had no service, but I pulled it out anyway and tried calling 911. The screen lit up. 4:18 a.m. That didn't make sense. It had been at least 5 minutes since I boarded. Maybe more. I watched the clock. 4:18. The seconds weren't moving. I tried to unlock it, but the screen glitched. The wallpaper changed. It wasn't my wallpaper anymore. It was a photo of a street corner at night. A wet crosswalk. Headlights. A bus turning left. The image made my chest tighten, because I knew that corner. It was 3 blocks from my apartment. I'd cross there almost every morning. The phone buzzed in my hand. A text appeared from an unknown number. You missed it the first time. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and slid beneath the seat. The lights in the train dimmed, then brightened. I heard breathing. Not mine. A slow inhale from behind me. I turned. There was a reflection in the door window now. A woman stood behind me. Close. So close her face should have been beside my shoulder. But when I spun around, there was no one. In the glass, she remained. She looked about my age. Her hair was wet and stuck to her face. Her lips were slightly parted. Her eyes weren't angry or sad. They were empty, like she had been waiting so long that whatever made her human had worn away. Her mouth moved. I couldn't hear her at first. Then the speaker clicked on, and her whisper came through the train. Don't get off. My throat went dry. The train began to slow. For the first time since leaving my station, the brakes made a sound. A low, dragging groan that filled the whole car. Outside the windows, the tunnel lights stopped streaking. The darkness thickened. Then a platform appeared ahead. It wasn't any station I knew. The tile walls were old, stained yellow with age. The ceiling was low. The platform was empty except for one bench and a single flickering bulb. There were no ads, no modern signs, no emergency call box. As the train crawled in, I saw the station name on the wall. It said, "Where you were supposed to die." Black letters on white tile. I stepped back from the doors. The reflections all turned their heads at once. The speaker crackled. "Next stop, where you were supposed to die." The doors opened. Cold air poured in. Not subway air. Outdoor winter air. Wet pavement, exhaust rain. I looked out. Beyond the platform, where the stairs should have been, there was a street. Not a stairwell. A street. My street. The one near my apartment. But it looked wrong. Too still. Too sharp. Like a memory someone had built from photographs. A bus sat in the middle of the road with its headlights on. The light had turned red. Rain fell without sound. And in the crosswalk, lying half in shadow, was my black backpack. The same backpack I was holding in my hands. I couldn't move. Something about that scene reached deep into me, into a place I didn't even know existed, and pulled out a memory. 3 months before that night, I had overslept. That was all. My alarm didn't go off, or maybe I turned it off in my sleep. I woke up 40 minutes late for work, cursed so loudly my upstairs neighbor banged on the floor, and sprinted through my morning routine like a lunatic. Because of that, my whole schedule shifted. I missed the bus I normally took to the train. I missed the walk I normally made across that intersection. Later that day, I remembered seeing police tape there. There had been an accident. A bus had jumped the curb when the driver swerved to avoid a delivery truck. It hit a light pole, shattered glass across the sidewalk, and according to the news, killed one pedestrian. I remembered reading it on my phone at lunch and thinking vaguely, that's awful. Then I moved on with my day. Because people move on from tragedies that don't touch them. I didn't know that, in another version of that morning, it had been me. The woman's whisper filled the train again. "Don't get off." But the doors stayed open, and something outside called my name. Marcus. It sounded like my mother. My mother had been dead for 4 years. I gripped the pole with both hands. "Marcus," the voice called again, gentle and tired. "Come here." I saw her then, across the platform by the bench. Not clearly at first, just the shape of her. Brown winter coat, short hair, one hand raised in that small wave she used to give me when she picked me up from school as a kid. Every part of me wanted to step out. That's the part one hates admitting. I wanted it so badly my chest hurt. Grief is not logical. Fear is not logical. Put both of them together at 4:18 in the morning on a train that shouldn't exist, and you are not the strong person you think you are. I took one step. The reflections in the windows reacted. All of them. Hands hit the glass. Silent mouths opened. The little boy shook his head so hard his forehead bumped the window again and again without making a sound. The woman behind me whispered, louder now. "Don't." My mother's voice changed. Not much. Just enough. "Marcus," it said, "you're late." That wasn't something my mother would say. Not like that. My hand tightened around the pole. The figure across the platform lowered its hand. For a second, the flickering bulb above it buzzed brighter, and I saw its face. It was not my mother. It was wearing her like a mask. The features were close, but wrong in tiny ways. Eyes too far apart. Smile too still. Skin too smooth, like wax left near heat. I stumbled backward. The doors began to close. Then something stepped onto the train. I didn't see it cross the threshold. One moment the doorway was clear. The next, a tall man stood just inside the car, facing away from me. He wore a transit worker's uniform. Navy jacket, cap, gloves. His shoulders were too narrow. His neck was too long. His head tilted slightly, as if he was listening to music only he could hear. The doors shut behind him. The train started moving. I backed toward the next car. The man didn't turn around. The speaker clicked. "Please remain seated, Marcus." The transit worker lifted one hand and pointed down the aisle. At the window. I didn't want to look, but I did. In the reflection, the seats were full now. Every passenger sat shoulder to shoulder, watching me, and among them was me. Not the pale version from the platform, a different me. This one sat near the end of the car, soaked from rain, bloodless, head leaning against the window. My eyes were closed. My backpack rested at my feet. I looked dead. I slapped both hands over my mouth to stop whatever sound was trying to come out. The transit worker finally turned. I wish he hadn't. There was nothing horrifying about his face in the obvious way. No monster mouth, no missing skin, no bloody wound. That almost made it worse. He looked like an ordinary man until you focused on him. Then your brain started rejecting little details. His eyes didn't reflect the lights. His smile reached too far. The skin under his jaw shifted slightly when the train rocked, like it wasn't attached correctly. He smiled at me. "You weren't on the list," he said. His voice came from his mouth and the speakers at the same time. I couldn't speak. He took one step forward. The train lights flickered. I ran. I ran into the next car, shoved through the door, almost dropped my bag, and kept going. Every car was empty in reality, packed in reflection. Faces turned as I passed. Some looked curious. Some looked sorry. Some looked furious, like I had stolen a seat that belonged to someone else. The transit worker followed without rushing. That was the scariest part. He didn't need to run. His footsteps stayed the same distance behind me no matter how fast I moved. Car after car, door after door, my hands slipping on the metal handles, my breath tearing in my throat. At some point, I started crying. Not loud, just tears running down my face while I whispered, "Please, please, please," like that meant anything. I reached the front car. No conductor booth, no controls, just another empty car with bright lights and black windows. Except this one had a woman sitting in it, really sitting there, not a reflection. She sat near the front, wearing a red coat, hands folded around a paper coffee cup. She looked maybe 45, with tired eyes and a scar above one eyebrow. She turned when I burst in, and instead of screaming or vanishing, she looked annoyed. "You took your time," she said. I almost collapsed. "You're real?" I asked. She looked past me through the door window. "Real enough. Sit down." Behind me, the transit worker entered the previous car. I didn't sit. I grabbed the pole and shook my head. "What is this? What the hell is this?" The woman stood and came toward me. "Not hell," she said. "Not exactly." That answer did not help. She looked at the windows, then at me. "Listen carefully. When the train stops again, do not look at the platform. Do not answer anything that speaks in a familiar voice. Do not step out unless I tell you." "Who are you?" My name was Elena. Was. The word hit me hard. She saw that I understood and gave a small nod. "I got on in 2009, she said. "I stepped off when I heard my daughter crying." Her face tightened for just a moment, and then she swallowed it down. "I've been riding ever since." I wanted to ask more, but the lights cut out. Complete darkness. The train kept moving. In the dark, the reflections should have disappeared. They didn't. Every window glowed faintly, full of faces. The transit worker's voice came through the speakers. "Unauthorized passenger in front car." Elena grabbed my wrist. Her hand was cold. "Under the seat," she said. "What? Now?" I dropped down and shoved myself beneath the row of seats like a scared kid hiding during a game. It barely fit. My shoulder crushed against metal. My bag jammed against my ribs. Elena sat above me, placing her legs naturally like she was just another passenger. The door opened. Footsteps entered. Slow. Measured. I could see polished black shoes from where I lay, inches from my face. The transit worker stopped in front of Elena. "Ticket," he said. Elena sighed. "You check every night." "Ticket?" She reached into her coat and handed him something. A folded paper, yellow with age. He took it. The train rocked. For one horrible second, his shoes turned toward me. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling. Every second stretched out like time itself was conspiring against me. Then Elena spoke. "New ones in the back." The shoes turned away. "He ran past," she continued. "Young guy. Security jacket." My stomach dropped. The worker said nothing. Then he walked toward the door between cars. It opened, closed. His footsteps faded. I crawled out, shaking. "You lied," I whispered. Elena looked at me. "I bought you maybe 2 minutes." The train began to slow again. "No," I said. "No, no, no." Elena grabbed my shoulders. "Marcus, listen to me. This thing only gets people at the station they skipped, the death they missed. It brings them back to the place where they were supposed to end, and it tries to make them accept it." "Why?" She shook her head. "I don't know. Balance, hunger, punishment. Maybe none of those." I stopped asking why. The brakes groaned. A station emerged outside. This one was not my street. It was a hospital hallway. Fluorescent lights, pale green walls, a vending machine, a nurse's station with nobody behind it. The station sign read, "Where she was supposed to die." Elena went very still. From the platform came the sound of a child crying. Small, heartbroken. "Mommy." Elena's face broke in a way I will never forget. She turned toward the doors. I grabbed her sleeve. "You said not to answer." She closed her eyes. "I know." The doors opened. The crying grew louder. "Mommy, please." Elena stood. I held on harder. "Elena." She looked down at me, and there was so much pain in her face that I let go before I even realized I was doing it. "I've been writing for 17 years, she said quietly. "Sometimes survival stops feeling like winning." I didn't know what to say. She stepped toward the open doors. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to be brave. But I was terrified, and she was already halfway there. Then she turned back once. "When your stop comes again," she said, "don't run from it. Run through it." "What does that mean?" She smiled sadly. "You'll know." Then she stepped onto the platform. The doors closed. The train pulled away. The last thing I saw was Elena kneeling in that hospital hallway, reaching for someone I couldn't see. Then the lights flickered, and her reflection appeared in the window with the others. Sitting quietly, hands folded, eyes forward, I was alone again, and the transit worker was still somewhere behind me. The train accelerated, so hard I fell against the doors. The speaker crackled. "Passenger read, Marcus. Please proceed to your assigned exit." I screamed then. I'm not embarrassed to admit it. I shouted for help. I cursed. I pounded on the doors. I kicked the glass. I tried to break a window with the metal buckle of my bag, but it didn't even scratch. The reflections watched. Some looked away. The little boy pressed his hand to the glass. I lifted mine slowly and placed it over his reflection. For a second, his fingers lined up with mine. The train began to slow. Again. Outside, the tunnel changed. The black walls became wet pavement. The smell of rain returned. I heard distant traffic. The lights of my street appeared beyond the glass. We were coming back to that station, where I was supposed to die. The announcement came soft and clear. "Next stop, where you were supposed to die." I thought about Elena. Don't run from it. Run through it. The doors opened. Cold rain blew into the train. My street waited outside, frozen in that impossible stillness. The bus idled in the road. Its headlights cut across the crosswalk. My backpack lay near the curb, even though I still had it over my shoulder. And this time, standing in the middle of the platform, was the dead version of me. He looked up. His eyes opened. I can't describe what it feels like to see your own dead face staring back at you. It strips something out of you. Some quiet confidence you carry around without noticing. The belief that tomorrow is guaranteed. The belief that you are separate from all the horrible things that happen to other people. He lifted one hand and pointed to the street. Behind me, the door between cars opened. The transit worker entered. "No alternate route," he said. I stepped onto the platform. Every instinct screamed not to, but I did. The rain hit my face. It was real. Cold. Sharp. The air smelled like diesel and wet concrete. The dead me stepped backward into the crosswalk. The bus engine revved. I understood then. Not completely, but enough. It wanted me to walk into the moment I had missed. It wanted me to take my place. I looked left. The bus headlights flared. I looked right. Nothing but dark storefronts. Behind me, the train doors stayed open. The transit worker stood in them, smiling. "Proceed," he said. I took one step toward the crosswalk, then another. My dead self watched me with those flat, patient eyes. The bus lurched forward, and I ran. Not into the road, not back to the train. I ran straight at the station wall. There was a tiled wall beside the platform where, in the real subway, there should have been advertisements. Here, it showed the laundromat under my apartment, my building door, the cracked buzzer panel, the little sticker someone had put over the lock that said, "Smile, you're on camera." I ran toward it with everything I had. Behind me, the transit worker shouted my name. For the first time, he sounded angry. The bus horn blasted. The dead version of me opened its mouth. The reflections in the train windows slammed their hands against the glass. I lowered my shoulder and hit the wall. It didn't feel like tile. It felt like falling through ice water. For 1 second, I was nowhere. There was no train, no platform, no body, just cold and pressure and a sound like thousands of voices whispering at once. Then I hit concrete, hard. My shoulder exploded with pain. My cheek scraped the ground. My bag landed beside me. I was lying on the floor of the subway station near my apartment. The real station. Dim lights. Dirty platform. A rat near the trash can. Somewhere above me, a bus hissed at a stoplight. A man in a maintenance vest stood 10 feet away holding a mop, staring at me like I had dropped from the ceiling. "You okay?" he called. I tried to answer and threw up instead. The police came. Then paramedics. Then 2 transit supervisors who looked annoyed until they saw how badly I was shaking. I told them a version of the story. Not the whole thing. You learn quickly that the truth has a limit. Say the train skipped stops and I got trapped, and people look concerned. Say the windows were full of dead passengers and a fake transit worker tried to deliver me to my missed death. And they look at each other like they're deciding whether you need a hospital for different reasons. They checked cameras. That's where things got worse. There was footage of me entering the station in Midtown at 4:16 a.m. There was footage of me standing on the platform. Then the cameras glitched for exactly 4 seconds. When the feed came back, I was gone. No train appeared. No doors opened. Nothing. At 4:18 a.m., the camera at my home station caught me falling out of thin air onto the platform floor. The official explanation was recording corruption. The unofficial explanation was that everyone stopped asking questions. My supervisor told me to take a week off. I quit instead. For months, I couldn't go underground. I took buses everywhere, even when it doubled my commute. I moved out of that apartment because I couldn't stand crossing that intersection anymore. Every time I saw a bus turn left in the rain, my knees went weak. I started looking up subway accidents, missing persons, people who vanished on platforms, old articles about commuters found in tunnels with no explanation. I found too many. Not proof exactly, just enough to make sleep difficult. And I found Elena. Her full name was Elena Marquez. In 2009, she disappeared from a late train after leaving her hospital job. She had a daughter who had died earlier that same year from complications after surgery. The article said Elena was grieving and likely took her own route somewhere unknown. They never found her. I printed her photo once. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself she had been real. In the picture, she wore the same red coat. I still ride trains sometimes. You can't really live in New York and avoid them forever. But never the last one. Never when the platform is empty. Never if the train arrives too quietly. And I don't look too long into dark windows. That's the habit that stayed with me most. Because sometimes, especially late at night, when the train goes through a tunnel and the glass turns black, I'll catch shapes behind me that don't match the seats. A man in an old coat, a woman with wet hair, a little boy with his palms pressed to the window. And once, just once, I saw Elena. She was sitting in the reflection across from me, hands folded in her lap. She looked exactly the same, tired but calm. When our eyes met in the glass, she gave me the smallest nod. Then the train reached the next station, the doors opened, and she was gone. I don't know why I survived. I don't know if I was supposed to. All I know is that somewhere beneath the city, there is a train that doesn't run on any schedule. It comes for people who slip through the cracks. People who miss the accident took the wrong road, overslept, turned back, stayed home, changed seats, crossed late, crossed early. People like me. People like maybe you. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, the morning after it happened. But my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger doesn't always wear a face. Sometimes it wears a routine, a platform, a familiar voice, a train that arrives right when you need it. So if you're ever alone underground and the last train pulls in completely empty, look at the windows before you step inside. Not the seats, the windows. And if the glass shows passengers who aren't really there, don't try to explain it. Don't tell yourself you're tired. Don't get on, because once the doors close, the next stop might not be home. Story 3. At exactly midnight, the phone in my uncle's house would ring once. Just once. Not 2 times. Not long enough for you to wake up confused and wonder if you imagined it. Just one sharp, old-fashioned ring from the landline mounted in the kitchen. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in a quiet house anymore. And the worst part was not the ringing. The worst part was what happened when I didn't answer. Because the next morning, there would always be a voicemail. And every voicemail was from me. My name is Daniel Reeves. I was 29 when this happened, living in southern Ohio, about 40 minutes outside Cincinnati. At the time, I worked remotely doing billing support for a medical company, which sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry. But honestly, I liked boring. I liked routine. I liked knowing what my day was supposed to look like. I had a small apartment above a dental office, a cheap coffee maker that burned everything, and a neighbor downstairs who watched game shows too loud every evening. My life was quiet in the way you don't appreciate until it stops being quiet. Then my Uncle Raymond died. I know that sounds like the beginning of a dramatic family story, but it really wasn't. Uncle Ray was not some mysterious rich relative I barely knew. He was just my mom's older brother. He never married, never had kids, and lived alone in a white 2-story house at the end of Hawthorne Road, just outside a small town called Belwick. Belwick was one of those places that looked asleep even in the middle of the day. One grocery store, one gas station, a diner with sun-faded flags in the window. Main Street had more empty storefronts than open ones. People waved from trucks even if they didn't know you, but not in a friendly way exactly. More like they were keeping track. Uncle Ray's house sat at the end of a narrow road that turned to gravel near the woods. It had a wraparound porch, chipped green shutters, and a backyard that sloped down toward a line of sycamore trees. In the summer, the place probably looked peaceful. In late October, when I first drove out there after the funeral, it looked tired. My mom was the one who told me he'd left it to me. She said it gently, like she was afraid I might refuse it. And honestly, I almost did. The house was old. It needed work. It smelled like dust, wet leaves, and that stale sweetness old houses get when nobody has opened the windows in a while. But I was paying too much for my apartment, and here was a whole house. No mortgage, just taxes and utilities. It felt irresponsible not to at least try. So I told myself I'd clean it up, stay there a few months, maybe sell it in the spring. That was the plan. The first week was normal. Not comfortable exactly, but normal. I moved in with 2 suitcases, my laptop, a mattress, and a folding table. Most of Uncle Ray's furniture was still there. The living room had a brown recliner angled toward an old television. The dining room table was covered with envelopes, newspapers, and one of those plastic pill organizers with every compartment empty. The upstairs bedrooms were cold even when the heat was on. I slept in the smallest bedroom because it had the least amount of furniture. Every night, the house made the usual old house sounds. Pipes ticking, floorboards settling, wind pressing against the windows, the furnace kicking on with a low metal groan. At first, every sound made me pause and listen, but after a few nights, my brain started filing them away as harmless. That's how you get used to a place. You teach yourself which noises matter. The landline was in the kitchen. I noticed it on my first day there. It was mounted on the wall beside the back door, beige plastic turned yellow with age, with a long curled cord hanging from the receiver. There was a small red light near the top and a row of square buttons for voicemail, hold, redial, and speaker. I remember smiling when I saw it because it felt so outdated. My uncle had kept everything longer than necessary. He still had a VCR. He still had paper maps in his glove compartment. He still wrote grocery lists on envelopes. The phone was plugged into the wall, but there was no service. I knew that because when I picked it up the first afternoon, there was no dial tone, just dead air. I didn't think about it again until the 8th night. I had been working late, trying to catch up after taking days off for the funeral and move. Around 11:30, I shut my laptop, made a peanut butter sandwich, and stood at the kitchen counter eating it because I hadn't unpacked plates yet. Outside, the backyard was black. Not city black, where there's still a glow behind everything. Real black. Woods black. The kind where the windows stop being windows and start looking like mirrors. I remember checking the lock on the back door. Then I went upstairs. I fell asleep faster than usual. And then the phone rang. One ring. Loud. Clear. Downstairs. I woke up already sitting halfway upright, heart thudding, not sure what I'd heard. For a few seconds, I just listened. The house was silent. I looked at my phone on the floor beside the mattress. 12 a.m. Not 11:59. Not 12:01. Midnight. I sat there in the dark, staring at my bedroom door, waiting for the sound to come again. It didn't. I told myself it had been a dream. That made the most sense. I was in a strange house. I was stressed. I'd been sleeping badly. Dreams can pull sounds from your memory and make them feel real. But I knew the sound had come from downstairs, and I knew it had been the kitchen phone. I didn't go check. That sounds cowardly now, but at the time I was half asleep, cold, and unwilling to walk through that house in the dark over one ring from a disconnected phone. So I lay back down, turned on a podcast low enough to distract myself, and eventually fell asleep again. The next morning, I went downstairs and found the red light on the landline blinking. Slowly. On. Off. On. Off. I stood in the kitchen doorway for a long time. I had not noticed that light before. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe it started during the night. I didn't know. I pressed the voicemail button. The phone's little speaker crackled. Then I heard my own voice. "Don't open the basement door tomorrow night." That was it. 6 words. My voice was quiet, flat, and close to the microphone. It sounded tired. It sounded like me after waking up, or after crying, or after not sleeping for a long time. I stepped backward so fast my shoulder hit the door frame. I remember whispering, "No," not because it was impossible, but because some part of me needed to say it out loud before the fear became real. I pressed the button again. The message replayed, "Don't open the basement door tomorrow night." I unplugged the phone from the wall. Then I pulled the phone cord out of the back of it too, even though I didn't know if that mattered. I put the receiver on the counter, wrapped the cord around it, and stood there breathing hard. The street looked ordinary outside the front window. Quiet, even comforting. A mail truck rolled slowly past. A dog barked somewhere down the road. Sunlight came through the dirty kitchen curtains. But my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. Sometimes it wears an ordinary morning. I called my mom first. She answered while driving, and I could hear her turn signal clicking. I told her the phone rang, and there was a voicemail. I told her it was my voice. There was a pause. Then she said, "Danny, are you sure it wasn't an old recording? How would Uncle Ray have a recording of me saying that?" "I don't know," she said. "Maybe you called him once. Maybe the phone saved something weird." "Mom, it said tomorrow night. About the basement." Another pause. She sighed, but not in a dismissive way. More like she was tired and worried, and didn't know what kind of worry to choose. "Ray's basement was a mess," she said. "Maybe don't go down there for now. I'll ask your Aunt Linda if she knows anything about the phone." That was my mom's solution. Don't go down there. And honestly, I was fine with that. The basement door was in the hallway off the kitchen. It was painted white, but the paint around the knob was worn gray from years of hands. I had opened it once when I first moved in and looked down the stairs. It smelled damp and metallic. There were shelves down there, boxes, old paint cans, and a pull chain light hanging near the bottom. I hadn't gone all the way down yet. I had planned to deal with it later. Now later felt like a threat. That day, I called the phone company. It took almost an hour to reach an actual person. I gave them the address and explained that there was an old landline in the house, and I wanted to know if it was active. The woman on the phone was polite but bored. She checked. No active service at that address, she said. Could it still receive calls somehow? No, sir. Could voicemail still work? No active service means no voicemail service. What about old messages stored in the phone? That would depend on the unit itself, she said. Some answering machines can store messages locally. This isn't an answering machine. It's just a wall phone. Then I'm not sure. I wanted her to sound more concerned. She didn't. I spent the rest of that afternoon looking up the model of the phone online. It was from the early 2000s. Basic cordless system base unit. The voicemail function was supposed to connect to a provider mailbox. It didn't store messages inside the phone. That did not make me feel better. I threw the phone into a cardboard box and shoved it in the hall closet. I also put a chair in front of the basement door. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but every time I walked past that hallway, I slowed down. That night, I stayed awake on purpose. I made coffee at 10 p.m., which was a mistake because it made my hands shake. I sat at the folding table in the living room with every light on, pretending to watch a movie on my laptop. I had my phone charged, my shoes on, and my keys beside me. 11:58. The house made its usual sounds. 11:59. The furnace clicked off. Then midnight came. From inside the hall closet, muffled but unmistakable, the phone rang once. My whole body went cold. The sound was softer because of the closet door, but it carried through the house like a bell underwater. I didn't move. I watched the hallway. Nothing happened. No footsteps. No whispering. No basement door creaking open. I waited until 12:15 before I got up. I walked to the closet and opened it. The box was on the floor where I'd left it. The phone was inside, unplugged, cord wrapped around it. The red voicemail light was blinking. I didn't touch it. I slept in my car that night. Actually, sleep is too generous. I sat in the driver's seat parked at the gas station in town, heater running every few minutes, staring through the windshield at the empty pumps. Around 4:30 in the morning, a clerk came outside to smoke and looked at me like I was the suspicious one. At sunrise, I went back. The house looked harmless in the gray morning light. That annoyed me more than if it had looked scary. I went straight to the closet, took the phone out, and pressed voicemail. My own voice came through. Move the chair before midnight. If it falls, don't turn around. The message ended. I didn't understand it. That was somehow worse than the first one. The first warning was clear. Don't open the basement door. Easy enough. But this one gave me instructions and then warned me about something that hadn't happened yet. Move the chair before midnight. If it falls, don't turn around. I almost called my mom again, but I knew what she'd say. She'd tell me to leave, or she'd tell me I was exhausted, or she'd offer to drive out and sit with me. I didn't want her in that house. I didn't even want myself in that house. So I called my friend Marcus. Marcus and I had known each other since high school. He worked security at a warehouse and had the kind of confidence that comes from being 6'3" and not easily embarrassed. When I told him what was happening, he laughed at first. Then I sent him a video. I recorded myself pressing the voicemail button. He called me back immediately. Dude, he said, that is messed up. I know. Do you have cameras? No. Get some. So I did. I drove to a big box store outside town and bought 2 cheap indoor cameras, one for the kitchen and one for the hallway facing the basement door. I also bought a new deadbolt, a baseball bat, and more coffee, because apparently fear turns you into the kind of person who thinks buying random objects equals control. Marcus came over after work to help install everything. He tried to keep it light. Maybe your uncle was into pranks, he said, tightening a screw on the camera mount. My uncle collected weather radios and canned peaches. He wasn't exactly a mastermind. Still, weird old dude house. You never know. We checked the basement door. The chair was still wedged under the knob. Marcus looked at it and said, "So the ghost told you to move the chair? Don't call it that. What do you want me to call it?" "I don't know. A problem." He smiled, but it faded quickly. By 11:45, we were both sitting in the living room. Marcus had the baseball bat across his lap, like he was guarding a bank. The hallway light was on. The chair was no longer under the basement knob because after arguing with myself for 20 minutes, I had moved it. It sat against the opposite wall. I didn't know if following the voicemail was smart or insane. At 11:59, Marcus stopped joking. The house became very quiet. At midnight, the phone rang from the kitchen counter. One ring. Marcus flinched so hard the bat rolled off his lap. "Where is it?" he whispered. "Kitchen." "I thought you unplugged it." "I did." We both stood. The red light blinked. Marcus stared at it and said, "Answer it." "No." "Daniel, answer it." So I did. I picked up the receiver with 2 fingers and held it near my ear. For a second, there was nothing. Then breathing. Slow. Wet. Close. Not words. Not static. Just someone breathing into the line. My skin tightened from my neck to my wrists. "Hello," I said. The breathing paused. Then, very softly, my own voice whispered, "Too early." The line clicked dead. Right then, from the hallway, the chair fell over. It hit the floor with a flat wooden crack. Marcus turned his head. I didn't. Everything inside me screamed to look, because that's what people do. A sound happens behind you, and your body wants to find it. But the voicemail had said if it falls, don't turn around. So I stared at Marcus. He stared over my shoulder. His face changed. I had never seen Marcus afraid before. Not really. Not the kind of fear that empties someone out. His mouth opened a little, but no sound came. I whispered, "What?" He shook his head once. Slowly. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled for the phone receiver and dropped it back onto the cradle. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Behind me, something moved in the hallway. Not footsteps, more like fabric dragging lightly across the floor. Marcus lifted the bat, but his hands were shaking. Then the hallway light went out. The kitchen light flickered once. Marcus grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the front door. We didn't run exactly. We stumbled. We knocked over the folding table. My laptop hit the floor. I remember my shoe slipping on a stack of mail, and Marcus yanking me upright so hard my shoulder hurt. We got outside and didn't stop until we were at his truck. Only when the doors were locked did I look back. The house was dark except for one window upstairs. My bedroom window. A pale shape stood behind the glass. Not a person exactly. Not clearly. Just a still, vertical shape where nothing should have been. Marcus started the truck and backed out so fast gravel sprayed behind us. Neither of us spoke until we were halfway to town. Then he said, "You're not going back there alone." I said, "What did you see in the hallway?" He gripped the steering wheel harder. "I saw you." I looked at him. "What?" He didn't look away from the road. "I saw you standing at the end of the hallway," he said. "By the basement door." "That's not funny." "I'm not joking. I was in the kitchen." "I know." He swallowed. "It looked like you, but wrong. Like someone wearing your face and not knowing what to do with it." I stayed at Marcus's apartment that night. In the morning, we checked the cameras from his laptop. The kitchen camera showed us sitting in the living room, then standing when the phone rang. It recorded me answering it. It recorded Marcus staring past me. It recorded the chair falling in the hallway. But the hallway camera stopped at 11:59. The file skipped from 11:59 p.m. to 12:07 a.m. 7 minutes missing. No glitch message. No motion event. Nothing. At 12:07, the hallway light was off and the chair was on the floor. The basement door was open about 6 inches. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like a story someone made up to scare strangers online. I wish that was all it was. That afternoon, Marcus drove me back so I could pack. We went in during daylight, both carrying flashlights even though every light was on. The house smelled different. Damp, sour, like the basement air had leaked upstairs overnight. The basement door was closed when we arrived. The chair was still lying on its side. The kitchen phone was on the counter. The red light was blinking again. Marcus said, "Don't." I pressed voicemail anyway. My voice came out of the speaker. "You brought him. Now it knows his name." Marcus stepped back. The message continued. "Tomorrow night, he'll hear it too." Then it ended. Marcus said, "Nope." He walked out of the kitchen, and for a second I thought he was leaving me there. But he came back with one of my duffel bags and started shoving clothes into it. "Take what you need," he said. "We're done." I didn't argue. We packed fast. Clothes, laptop, documents, a few boxes of photos my mom wanted from Uncle Ray's things. I left furniture, dishes, everything else. Before we left, Marcus stopped near the hallway. "What about the basement?" he asked. I hated that he asked. "I'm not going down there." What if someone is down there? That was the first time either of us said it out loud. Someone. Not something. Someone. That possibility should have made me feel better. A person could be explained. A person could be caught. A person could be stopped. But it didn't feel better. Because if a person was doing this, they had been in the house with me. They had used my voice. They had known what I would do before I did it. I called the Belwick police from the driveway. 2 officers came about 20 minutes later. One was older, with a gray mustache and a calm voice. The other looked younger than me, and kept glancing at the woods like he didn't enjoy being out there. I explained everything in the least insane way possible. Disconnected landline. Strange recordings. Someone possibly inside the house. Cameras losing footage. Basement door open. I did not lead with my own voice as leaving messages from the future. I had enough sense not to. The older officer, Harding, asked if my uncle had enemies. I almost laughed. My uncle barely talked to anyone. Any relatives upset about the house? No. Any history of break-ins? I don't know. They searched the house. Marcus and I waited outside near his truck. I watched the windows while they moved room to room. Their flashlight beams passed behind curtains. At one point, the younger officer opened the upstairs bedroom window and looked out, then closed it. They spent the longest time in the basement. When they came back up, Officer Harding looked less dismissive. "Basement door latch is loose," he said. "Could open with pressure from air movement." "What about signs of someone living down there?" "No bedding. No food. No fresh footprints we could make out. Lot of dust, lot of storage." "Did you find a phone line?" He nodded. "Old wiring. Nothing active that we can tell." Marcus said, "Then how is that phone ringing?" Officer Harding looked at him, then at me. "Could be electrical. Could be the unit malfunctioning." "It's unplugged," I said. He didn't answer that. The younger officer came over holding a small object in a clear evidence bag. "Found this tucked behind a shelf near the basement stairs," he said. It was a key. Old brass. Dark with age. There was a piece of masking tape wrapped around it with writing in black marker. "Daniel." My mouth went dry. Officer Harding asked, "You know what this opens?" I shook my head, but I had a bad feeling I did. Uncle Ray had a locked room upstairs. I had forgotten about it until that moment. At the end of the second-floor hallway, past the bathroom, there was a narrow door I assumed led to a linen closet. It was locked when I moved in. I tried it once, shrugged, and never thought about it again. The officers took the key upstairs. It fit. The room behind the door was not a closet. It was small, maybe 6 feet by 8 feet, with a slanted ceiling and no furniture. The only window had been covered from the inside with cardboard and duct tape. The walls were lined with corkboards, and the corkboards were covered with photos. Photos of the house. Photos of the road. Photos of me. Not recent photos. Old ones. Family birthdays. Christmas at my parents' house. Me at 15 holding a fishing rod beside Uncle Ray. Me at my high school graduation. Me standing next to my first car. Pictures I recognized from family albums. But there were newer ones too. Printed photos from social media. My apartment building. My workplace from before I went remote. A blurry photo of me walking out of a grocery store with a bag in my hand. At the center of the largest corkboard was a handwritten note. He'll come back when the house calls. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was on the floor in the hallway. Marcus was saying my name. Officer Harding was telling the younger officer to photograph everything. The room smelled like dust and warm paper. On the floor was a cassette recorder, a box of tapes, and a newer digital voice recorder with a cracked screen. The tapes had labels. Daniel age 8, Daniel age 12, Daniel called July, Daniel laughing, Daniel angry, Daniel sleepy. My uncle had recorded me for years. Not constantly, not obviously, but enough. Enough to make something. Enough to stitch my voice together. The police took the equipment. They asked my mom questions. They asked my aunt questions. Nobody had an answer. My mom cried so hard on the phone she could barely speak. She kept saying, "He loved you. Ray loved you." And I believe, in his own broken way, maybe he did. But love can rot when someone keeps it locked in a room. For a few days, I let myself believe we had solved it. The phone calls were part of some setup. My uncle had installed something. A timer, a recorder, some hidden system in the walls. The messages were built from old recordings. Creepy, yes. Disturbing, absolutely. But human. Explainable. Then Marcus got the call. It happened 3 nights later. He had gone back to his apartment, and I was staying with my mom. My phone rang at 12:04 a.m. It was Marcus. When I answered, he didn't speak at first. I heard breathing. For one horrible second, I thought it was happening again. Then Marcus whispered, "Dan, what happened?" My home phone rang. "You don't have a home phone." "I know." His voice sounded thin and far away. It rang from inside the wall. I sat up in bed. "What do you mean inside the wall?" "In the kitchen. Behind the outlet." I heard it. "Leave," I said. "I'm already outside." "What did the message say?" He didn't answer. "Marcus." He exhaled shakily. "It was your voice." My stomach turned. "What did it say?" He was quiet for so long I thought the call dropped. Then he said, "It said, don't let Daniel come back tomorrow." The next day, I received a voicemail on my cell phone. Not from the house phone. Not from an unknown number. From my own number. I stared at the screen in my mom's kitchen while she stood beside me, one hand pressed over her mouth. The message was 14 seconds long. I played it on speaker. At first, nothing. Then my voice. Not the stitched, flat voice from the house. This sounded exactly like me. Breathing hard. Terrified. "Mom isn't safe if you stay. Go back before midnight. Alone." My mom grabbed the phone and deleted the message. I yelled at her, and she yelled back, and both of us were scared, so it turned ugly fast. She said I wasn't going back. I said someone had followed this thing to Marcus. She said that made no sense. I said none of it made sense. That afternoon, I called Officer Harding. He listened, but I could tell the case had shifted in his mind. The room upstairs had been disturbing, but it was still evidence of my uncle's obsession, not proof of some ongoing threat. When I told him Marcus heard a phone in his wall, and I got a voicemail from myself, his voice got careful. "Daniel," he said, "have you considered staying somewhere else for a while? Somewhere you feel safe?" "You think I'm imagining it." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He sighed. "We're looking into the equipment from the house. But unless someone makes a direct threat, or we find evidence of a living person doing this, there's only so much we can do. There's only so much we can do." I heard that sentence a lot in the following days. From police, from the phone company, from a locksmith, from everyone who wanted the world to be made of normal problems. That evening, Marcus drove over. He looked exhausted. He had dark circles under his eyes and kept checking his phone. "We should burn that house down," he said. He was joking, mostly, but then he handed me something. A small brass key, the same kind the police had found in the basement. This one had been taped under his truck's driver's side handle. The masking tape label said Marcus. He didn't have to say anything else. I went back to the house alone. I know that sounds stupid, It was stupid, but fear doesn't always make you run away. Sometimes it corners you until the only way out feels like walking straight at the thing you're afraid of. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. The house was freezing. The power was still on, but the air had that abandoned feel, like the rooms had been holding their breath since I left. I didn't turn on every light this time. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to see too much. I went to the kitchen. The landline was gone. The police had taken it, but at 11:58, something in the wall clicked. I stood perfectly still. 11:59. Another click. From inside the kitchen wall, where the phone jack was. Then midnight. A ring exploded through the house. Not from a phone. From everywhere. From the walls. From upstairs. From the basement. One ring, stretched and layered, like every dead wire in that house had woken up at once. I covered my ears and stumbled backward. Then the answering machine beep sounded from the hallway. There was no answering machine. Still, the message played. My voice came through the walls. "You're late." The basement door opened. Not slowly. Not with a long, dramatic creak. It just popped open a few inches, like someone on the other side had pressed it with 2 fingers. I should have run. I know that. Instead, I walked toward it. There was a smell coming up from below. Damp concrete. Old wood. Something hot and dusty, like an electric motor burning out. My phone flashlight shook in my hand as I started down the stairs. The basement looked the same as before, but also not. The shelves leaned inward. Boxes were stacked along the walls. The pull-chain light swung slightly, though there was no breeze. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw the old workbench. Above it, nailed to a wooden beam, was a row of phones. Not just one, 6 of them. Old rotary phones, cordless bases, a black office phone, a cracked answering machine, all wired together in a messy bundle that disappeared into the wall behind the workbench. The red lights on all of them were blinking. On, off, on, off, waiting. I heard a floorboard creak upstairs. I turned off my flashlight. The basement went black except for the blinking red lights. Then a voice spoke from the top of the stairs. My voice. "Don't hide down there." I stopped breathing. Footsteps moved across the kitchen. Slow, careful. A shadow crossed the crack beneath the basement door. Someone was in the house. Not a ghost. Not a memory. Someone real enough to make the floor complain. I crouched behind a stack of boxes, one hand over my mouth, trying not to make a sound. The basement door opened wider. A figure stood at the top of the stairs. I could not see the face, just the outline. Average height, thin, head tilted slightly like it was listening. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. The screen lit up. Unknown caller. The sound was small, but in that basement it might as well have been an alarm. The figure's head snapped toward me. I ran. Not upstairs. I couldn't. The person was blocking the stairs. There was an old storm cellar door at the back of the basement. I had seen it on the inspection paperwork, but hadn't opened it. It led outside through those angled metal doors you see on old houses. I sprinted toward it, crashing into boxes, knocking something glass to the floor. Behind me, the figure came down the stairs fast. No dramatic words. No movie villain breathing. Just feet hitting wood. I slammed into the storm door and shoved. It didn't move. I shoved again. Russ screamed. Behind me, something grabbed the back of my jacket. I twisted out of it, leaving the jacket in their hand, and threw my shoulder into the door with everything I had. It burst open. Cold night air hit my face. I scrambled up the concrete steps on my hands and knees, tearing my palms, and came out into the backyard under a sky with no moon. The person was right behind me. I ran toward the trees because panic chose direction before logic could. Wet leaves slipped under my shoes. Branches slapped my face. I heard the storm door bang open behind me. Then the yard flooded with red and blue light. A siren chirped once. "Police! Stop!" I fell near the tree line. My legs just gave out. Officer Harding had been parked down the road. He later told me Marcus called him after I left, furious and scared, and said if they didn't send someone, he was going himself. Harding didn't have enough for a warrant, maybe not even enough for official surveillance, but he drove by anyway. He saw a car parked half hidden behind the old shed. Not mine. That was enough. The person who came out of the basement was not my uncle, obviously. It was a man named Ellis Vaughan. He had been Uncle Ray's neighbor years earlier, before selling his place and moving 2 towns over. He was in his 50s, quiet, divorced, worked repairing old electronics. The police found tools in his car, wire spools, audio equipment, printed photos, and a folder with my name on it. He had helped my uncle install the phone system. That was what they eventually pieced together. Uncle Ray, toward the end of his life, had become paranoid and isolated. He believed the house could remember voices. He believed certain recordings could predict things. Or maybe he just wanted to believe that. Ellis encouraged it, fed it, helped him build the system in the basement and the locked room upstairs. After Ray died, Ellis kept coming back. He had keys. He knew the house. He had access to old recordings of me and newer ones pulled from videos, voicemails, social media clips, anything he could find. He used software to clone my voice. Not perfectly at first, but enough to scare me. Enough to make me obey. The warnings were not from the future. They were instructions. He created the danger, then warned me about it. If the voicemail said don't open the basement door, it was because he planned to be behind it. If it said move the chair, it was because he needed the door clear. If it said Marcus would hear it too, it was because he had followed Marcus home and planted something near his apartment. He wasn't predicting anything. He was rehearsing me, training me, seeing how much control he had. The police said that when they searched Ellis's home, they found more recordings, more names. Not just mine, other people, some from years ago, some recent. He had a whole room of voices. What his final plan was, I don't know. Harding never told me everything. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he thought he was sparing me. But I heard enough. Ellis had written about the house like it was alive. He believed Uncle Ray had opened it. He believed I was supposed to come back to it. He believed voices could be worn like masks. That phrase still bothers me. Worn like masks. Ellis was arrested, but the story never made big news. Local paper wrote something vague about burglary, unlawful surveillance, harassment, and electronic tampering. A few people in Belwick gossiped for a week. Then the town moved on, because towns always do. I sold the house to a developer 6 months later for less than it was worth. They tore it down the following spring. I didn't go watch. My mom asked if I wanted anything from it before demolition. I said no. I didn't want the photos. I didn't want the furniture. I didn't want Uncle Ray's old maps or radios or canned peaches. I wanted the house erased. For a while, I thought that would help. It didn't. I still wake up at midnight sometimes. Not every night. Just enough. My body knows the time before I look. I'll open my eyes in the dark and wait, listening for a ring that shouldn't come. I don't have a landline. Nobody I know does anymore. That doesn't matter. Sometimes I hear phones in dreams. Old phones, rotary phones, wall phones, phones buried inside walls. They ring once, and I wake up with my throat tight and my hands cold. Marcus and I don't talk about it much. We're still friends, but that night changed something in both of us. He moved apartments, got rid of his truck, stopped posting online completely. He jokes less now. My mom still says Uncle Ray was sick near the end. Maybe he was, but sickness doesn't explain everything people do. Sometimes it only opens the door for the worst parts to walk through. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the shape I'd seen through the window that night. The still figure in my bedroom, the calm darkness where a face should have been, the way it didn't move when it knew I was looking. The official explanation is that Ellis was inside the house. The official explanation is that he wore dark clothes and stood near the window to scare me. That makes sense. Most of it makes sense. But there's one thing I never told the police, because by the time everything came out, I knew how it would sound. When I was hiding in the basement before Ellis came down the stairs, before the unknown call lit up my phone, I heard one more message play from those phones on the workbench. It was very quiet, almost buried under the clicking wires. It was my voice again, but older, much older, weak and raspy, like an old man trying to whisper through a dry throat. It said, "He isn't the one calling." Then all the red lights went dark at once. I have tried to explain that to myself for years. Bad audio, a damaged tape, my uncle's voice, my own fear twisting sound into words. Anything. Most days, I can live with one of those answers. But every now and then, usually when I'm alone and the house I live in now gets too quiet, I'll think about Uncle Ray's locked room. All those recordings, all those years of my voice captured without me knowing. And I'll wonder how many times you have to record a person before something starts recording back. Last month, I got a voicemail. There was no missed call, no number, just a voicemail that appeared on my phone at 12:01 a.m. For almost an hour, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the notification. My apartment was silent. Outside, traffic hissed softly on wet pavement. Somewhere upstairs, a neighbor laughed at something on TV. Normal sounds, safe sounds. I finally pressed play. For 3 seconds, there was only breathing. Then my own voice whispered, "Tomorrow night, don't answer." I deleted it. I turned off my phone. I left every light on until morning. And I know what you're thinking, because I would think it too. You'd think that after everything, I'd be used to fear. You'd think I'd know what to do. Call the police. Change my number. Move again. Be rational. But sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. And if your phone ever rings at midnight, just once, from a number you don't recognize, or worse, from your own number, don't try to be brave. Don't answer it, because sometimes a voice is not a voice. Sometimes it's a door. And once you open it, something on the other side learns how to say your name. Story 4. Would you look? I've asked myself that question 100 times since it happened, and I still don't know the honest answer. People like to say they would follow instructions when something feels wrong. They'd say they'd leave the food, get back in the car, and drive away. They'd say curiosity wouldn't get them. They'd say a warning like that would be enough. But when you're standing alone in front of a dark house at midnight, holding a paper bag of cold food, and you can see a light moving around inside like someone is pacing from room to room, your brain does strange things. It tries to explain it. It tries to make it normal. And sometimes, by the time your brain finally admits something is wrong, it's already too late. My name is Evan. I was 26 when this happened. I lived in a small town in northern Ohio, about 30 minutes outside Toledo. Not the middle of nowhere, exactly, but close enough that once you got past the gas stations and the strip malls, the roads turned narrow and dark pretty fast. At the time, I was doing food delivery almost every night. I had been laid off from a warehouse job that spring, and I was taking classes online. So delivery seemed like an easy way to keep bills paid without dealing with a manager breathing down my neck. Most nights were boring. Fast food pickups, college kids ordering milkshakes, families ordering pizza at 6:30, nurses ordering from diners at the end of their shifts. The late night orders were usually weird, but not scary weird. People would open the door half asleep. Sometimes they were drunk. Sometimes they forgot they ordered anything and looked at me like I'd materialized out of the fog. I got used to it. My routine was simple. I'd start around 5 in the evening, stop at a gas station around 9 for coffee, and keep going until 1 or 2 in the morning if the tips were good. I drove an old gray Corolla with a cracked rear bumper and a heater that only worked when it felt like it. I kept pepper spray in the driver's door because my older sister insisted on it, but I never thought I'd actually need it. That night was a Thursday in late October. I remember that clearly because Halloween decorations were everywhere, but it was still a week away. Plastic skeletons on porches, fake spiderwebs on bushes, those cheap inflatable ghosts rocking in the wind. The kind of stuff that's supposed to be spooky, but really just makes neighborhoods look more alive. The weather had turned cold that week. Not winter cold, but that damp fall cold that gets under your hoodie and stays there. The sky was low and cloudy, and there was this mist hanging around the streetlights that made every road look a little blurred. By 11:40, I was ready to quit. I had done 8 deliveries, made decent money, and my coffee had gone lukewarm. I was sitting in the parking lot of a 24-hour burger place, scrolling on my phone and trying to decide whether to go home or take one more order. Then my delivery app pinged. It was an order from the burger place I was already parked in front of. 1 combo meal, 1 milkshake, 1 side of onion rings. The pay showed $118.42. I actually laughed out loud when I saw it. The base pay was normal, but the customer had already tipped $100. That doesn't happen. Not in my town. Not for a burger and onion rings. At first I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe the person meant to tip 10 and added an extra 0. But the app showed it as confirmed, and the delivery address was about 17 minutes away, outside town. I tapped it before anyone else could. That was my first mistake. Inside the restaurant, the cashier handed me the bag without looking up from her phone. "Big tip," she said. I frowned. "How'd you know?" She nodded toward the order screen behind her. Everybody saw it. We were joking about who orders 1 burger at midnight and tips $100. That made me feel a little weird, but not enough to cancel. $100 was $100. At that point in my life, that was groceries and gas. The order name was M. Vale. The delivery instructions were blank at first. I remember checking them while I sat in my car, waiting for my windshield to defog. It just said, "Leave at door." Normal. Then, at exactly 12 a.m., while I was pulling out of the parking lot, the app updated. A new instruction appeared under the order. "Do not look through the front window." I stared at it for a second. Then I laughed again, but this time it was that uncomfortable kind of laugh you do when something feels stupid and wrong at the same time. I told myself it was probably a prank. Some teenager with money trying to freak out a delivery driver. Maybe there was a Halloween decoration inside. Maybe they wanted to record my reaction through a doorbell camera. I almost canceled right there, but the app had that big payout sitting on the screen, and I had already picked up the food. So I told myself, just don't look through the window. Drop the food and leave. Simple. The route took me out of town, past the last open gas station, and onto County Road 18. The streetlights disappeared after a few minutes. Houses became farther apart, then stopped showing up altogether. It was just fields on both sides, dark and flat, with occasional lines of trees that looked black against the sky. I remember the sound of the onion rings shifting in the paper bag on the passenger seat every time I hit a bump. The app's GPS sent me down a side road I had never taken before. It was called Mill Creek Lane, but calling it a lane was generous. It was basically a paved strip with cracked edges and weeds growing up through the shoulders. There were no houses at first. Then one appeared on the right. It sat far back from the road behind a dead-looking yard and a chain-link fence that had fallen inward in several places. The mailbox leaned sideways with no numbers on it. One of the shutters on the second floor was hanging loose, tapping softly against the siding whenever the wind moved. The house looked abandoned. Not "old person lives here and doesn't maintain it" abandoned. Actually abandoned. The roof sagged on one side. The porch railing was broken. The windows were dark, except for a faint, moving glow somewhere inside. I slowed down. The GPS said I had arrived. I pulled over in front of the driveway, but didn't turn in. I just sat there with my hands on the wheel, engine running, heater blowing weak air at my knees. The app buzzed again. "M. Vale, please bring it to the front door." I looked from the message to the house. The front yard was overgrown, but there was a narrow path through the weeds leading up to the porch. It looked like someone had walked it recently. That detail bothered me more than the house itself. I typed, "Is this the correct address?" The reply came almost immediately. "M. Vale, yes." Then another message. "M. Vale, leave it on the porch. Do not knock." I sat there for maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds feels much longer when every part of your body is telling you to leave. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting in that rural way, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face, and that night it wore the face of a delivery app with a big tip attached. Still, I got out. I took the food bag and the drink carrier. The milkshake cup was cold enough to sting my fingers. I locked my car even though I was only going to be away from it for a minute. I remember hearing the beep echo across the empty road. The house was darker up close. The porch boards looked damp. Leaves had collected in the corners. There was no porch light, no doorbell camera that I could see, no mat, no flower pot, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived there. But inside, someone was moving. I could see the flashlight beam through gaps in the curtains. It passed across one downstairs room, vanished, then reappeared in another. Slow, steady, like someone searching for something. I kept my eyes down because of the instructions. Do not look through the front window. That line kept repeating in my head, and it made me feel ridiculous, like a kid playing some dumb game. Don't look, don't look, don't look. The front window was to the left of the door. The curtains were thin and yellowed, and the flashlight made them glow for a second every time it passed behind them. I stepped onto the porch. The boards creaked under me. I set the food down right in front of the door. Took a picture through the app, keeping the camera angled low so the window wasn't in frame. My hands were shaking just a little, and I hated that. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from somewhere inside made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Then something tapped on the glass. Not loud, just two soft taps. Tap, tap. I didn't look at the window. I stared at the door. The door was old wood, painted white years ago, now peeling in strips. There was a brass mail slot near the bottom. No peephole, no handle on the outside, just a deadbolt and a rusty knob. Tap, tap. This time it came from the front window again. I stepped backward. The app buzzed. Vale. Thank you, Evan. I stopped moving. I hadn't told them my name. I mean, technically the app showed my first name to customers. I knew that. It wasn't impossible. But seeing it right then, outside that house, felt different. Personal. I typed, "Food is at the door." Then I turned around and walked back across the yard. I was about halfway to my car when I made my second mistake. I heard the front door open behind me. Not all the way, just enough for the hinges to complain. I turned my head before I could stop myself. I didn't look through the front window. I looked back at the door, but from where I was standing, the window was right beside it. My eyes flicked there for half a second, not even on purpose, and in that half second I saw a face. It was pressed close to the glass, behind the curtain. I couldn't make out much, just pale skin, the dark holes of eyes, a mouth that wasn't smiling, exactly, but wasn't relaxed either. It looked calm. That was the worst part. Not angry, not surprised, just calm, like whoever was behind that curtain had been waiting for my eyes to find them. I turned away so fast I almost dropped my phone. I got into my car, locked the doors, and shoved the bag strap out of the way so I could grab the gear shift. That's when my phone buzzed again. Vale, you looked. My heart sank into my stomach as the message appeared on the screen. And for 1 second, I just stared at it like my brain couldn't translate the words. You looked. I put the car in drive. Before I could pull away, headlights turned on behind the house. Not inside the driveway. Behind it, a vehicle had been parked somewhere in the dark, hidden by the trees or the garage. The lights clicked on and cut through the mist, bright and white. Then the engine started. I didn't wait to see what it was. I slammed the gas and shot forward down the road. My tires slipped on wet leaves near the shoulder, and for a second the back of my car fishtailed. I corrected hard, almost overcorrected, and kept going. The headlights pulled out behind me. At first they were far back. Then they got closer. I told myself maybe it was just someone leaving. Maybe I had scared them. Maybe they lived there and were annoyed. My brain was still trying to protect me with stupid explanations. Then the car behind me flashed its high beams. Once. Twice. The app buzzed again. Vale, don't speed. There are deer. I almost threw my phone. That message scared me more than the headlights, because they weren't just chasing me. They were watching me closely enough to comment on how I was driving. I tried calling 911, but the screen showed one bar, then no service. The call didn't go through. I kept one hand on the wheel and one hand gripping the phone so tight my knuckles hurt. The road had no shoulder, no houses, nowhere to turn around. Just trees and ditches and that pair of headlights behind me, gaining and falling back, like whoever it was wanted me to know they could catch up whenever they wanted. Then my phone buzzed again. Vale, you should have followed the instructions. That was the moment I stopped pretending. I don't know how else to explain it. Up until then, fear had been building in the background, like pressure behind a wall. But that message broke something open. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling on the wheel. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I knew if I kept going the way the GPS had brought me, I'd have at least 10 more minutes of empty road before I hit town. I also knew there was a main road somewhere west, because I had delivered near there before. I just didn't know exactly how to reach it. I saw a turn coming up on the left. No sign, just a dirt road cutting through a line of trees. I took it without slowing down enough. The Corolla bounced so hard the milkshake, which I'd forgotten was still in the cup holder from an earlier order, splashed across the console. Something hit the underside of the car with a loud crack. The headlights followed. Of course they did. The dirt road was worse than the paved one. Potholes, mud, branches scraping the sides of the car. I was going maybe 40, which was way too fast for that road, but I couldn't make myself slow down. My phone signal came back for a second. I called 911 again. This time it rang. A dispatcher answered, calm and professional. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being followed, I said. My voice sounded thin and strange. I'm a delivery driver. I just dropped an order at this abandoned house on Mill Creek Lane, and now someone's chasing me. Are you in immediate danger? Yes, I think so. I don't know. They're behind me right now. What is your location? I don't know. A dirt road off Mill Creek. I turned left. I'm trying to get back to town. Can you describe the vehicle following you? I looked in the mirror. The headlights were too bright. I couldn't see the make or model. I can't. It's behind me. Maybe a truck. Maybe an SUV. I can't tell. Do not drive home, she said. Stay on the line with me. Keep driving toward a public area if you can. That part always stuck with me. Do not drive home. Because I had been thinking it without realizing it. My brain wanted my apartment, my couch, my locks, my normal life. But leading someone like that to where I lived would have been the worst thing I could do. The dirt road curved sharply right. I took it too fast. The back of my car slid, and for one terrifying second, I thought I was going into the ditch. I shouted something, not even words, just panic. The car corrected, bounced, and kept going. The dispatcher asked if I was okay. I said yes, but I wasn't. Not really. Then the vehicle behind me sped up. It came close enough that its headlights filled my entire rearview mirror. I could see the outline now. A dark pickup truck. Big. Older. No front plate that I could see. It tapped my bumper. Not hard enough to wreck me. Just enough to let me feel it. My head snapped forward. The phone slipped from my hand and fell between the seat and the console. I grabbed for it blindly, but another tap hit the bumper. This one harder. I screamed. I'm not ashamed of that. I screamed like a little kid. The dispatcher's voice came from the floor somewhere, muffled but still there. Sir? Are you there? Sir? I couldn't reach the phone. I kept driving. The road finally opened up ahead, and I saw pavement. A bigger road. There was a stop sign at the end, but I barely slowed down. I turned right onto the main road, tires squealing, and for the first time in several minutes I saw lights in the distance. A gas station. Not open, I realized as I got closer. The pumps were lit, but the store was dark. Still, there were cameras. Lights. A parking lot. I pulled in fast, swung around near the front doors, and laid on the horn. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that someone was inside. Maybe that lights and cameras would scare the truck off. The pickup slowed at the entrance. For a second, it just sat there. Then it drove past. It didn't turn in. I watched the taillights continue down the road until they disappeared. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't get the car into park at first. I finally managed it, then dug my phone out from under the seat. The dispatcher was still there. I told her I was at the gas station on Route 6. She told me officers were on the way. I sat there with every door locked, breathing in short, ugly gasps. The gas station lights buzzed overhead. A plastic bag rolled across the parking lot in the wind. Everything looked normal again, and that almost made it worse. Then my delivery app buzzed. I looked at the screen. M. Vale, wrong place. A second later, M. Vale, come back. Then, M. Vale, I paid for delivery. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned me. Police arrived about 7 minutes later. 2 cruisers pulled in, lights on but no sirens. I got out with my hands visible because I was so rattled I didn't even know what I looked like. One officer was older, maybe in his 50s, with a gray mustache. The other was younger and kept looking down the road like he expected the truck to come back. I explained everything as clearly as I could. The order, the tip, the instruction, the house, the face, the messages, the truck. The older officer asked to see my phone. I showed him the app. The messages were still there. Do not look through the front window. You looked. Don't speed. There are deer. You should have followed the instructions. Wrong place. Come back. I watched his face change as he read them. Not dramatically. He didn't gasp or anything. But whatever skepticism he had at first disappeared. He asked if I could show them the address. I said yes, but I didn't want to go back. He said, "You're not going back alone." They had me sit in the back of one cruiser while they contacted another unit. I remember being embarrassed by that, which is stupid, but I was. Sitting in the back of a police car made me feel like I had done something wrong. The younger officer stayed with me while the older one talked on the radio. He asked if I had any enemies. I almost laughed. I deliver burgers and take online classes. He nodded like that answer didn't surprise him. Sometimes it's random, he said. That didn't comfort me. After a while, the older officer came back and told me another unit was going to check the house. He asked again if I was sure about the address. I was. The app still showed the pin on Mill Creek Lane. They told me to wait at the gas station while they went out there. I said okay because I didn't know what else to say. For about 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then the older officer's radio crackled. I couldn't understand most of it, just pieces. Residence appears vacant. Front door open. Food on porch. Possible signs of recent occupancy. Then there was a pause. A longer pause. The younger officer standing outside my door stiffened. The radio crackled again. Need additional units at this location. That was all I heard. The officer told me to stay in the car. I didn't argue. Later, they told me what they found. Not all at once, and not in some dramatic speech like in movies. I got bits of it from the officers that night, more from a detective the next day, and a few details months later when they called to update me. The house had been abandoned for almost 6 years. The owner had died, and the property had been tied up in some legal mess with relatives who lived out of state. Teenagers sometimes broke in. Homeless people occasionally used it. The sheriff's department had been out there before for vandalism and one small fire in the garage. But someone had been using it recently. Not living there exactly. More like preparing it. The front room had a chair set up behind the window, facing the porch. The curtain had a narrow slit cut in it at eye level. There was a flashlight on a small table, along with a portable battery pack and 2 phones. One of the phones was logged into the delivery app as M. Vale. The name wasn't real. The account had been created with a prepaid card and a burner number. In the kitchen, they found empty water bottles, cigarette butts, and a small space heater. In the dining room, there was a laptop, but it was gone by the time police arrived. They knew because the dust on the table had a clean rectangle where it had been sitting. That bothered me. It meant whoever had been inside left in a hurry, but not so much of a hurry that they forgot the most important thing. The back door was open. There were fresh tire tracks behind the house leading through the grass to an old service path that connected to another road. They never found the pickup, but the part one still think about most was what they found upstairs. In one of the bedrooms, taped to the wall, were printed screenshots. Not just of me, other delivery drivers. Photos taken from the front porch, some from inside the house, through that slit in the curtain. Men and women holding food bags, looking confused, looking annoyed, looking bored. Most of them hadn't looked through the window. There were handwritten notes under some of the pictures. Didn't look. Too fast. Called customer. Left at steps. Under mine, there was no note yet. Just my photo, printed from the delivery app profile screen, with my first name under it. That's how they knew my name before I got there. The detective told me they believed the person or people behind it had been targeting delivery drivers for at least a few weeks. The $100 tip was bait. The instruction was part of the game. They wanted to see who would look. What happened to the ones who did? I asked. The detective didn't answer right away. That silence was an answer by itself. He eventually said, "We're still looking into it." I asked if anyone had gone missing. He said no one connected to that house had been officially reported missing. Officially, that word did a lot of work. The food I delivered was still on the porch when police arrived. The bag hadn't been touched. The milkshake had fallen over and leaked through the drink carrier. No one had ordered it because they were hungry. For a couple of days after, I didn't sleep much. Every sound outside my apartment made me sit up. Tires on wet pavement. A car door closing. Footsteps on the stairs. My upstairs neighbor dropped something one night, and I woke up already halfway out of bed, reaching for a baseball bat I didn't own. My sister came over and stayed with me the first weekend. She was furious in that quiet way older sisters get when they're scared but don't want to show it. She made me delete the delivery app at first. Then she made me call the company and report everything, which I had already done, but she wanted to hear me do it again. The company froze the customer account. They told me they were cooperating with police. They sent some long corporate email about driver safety that sounded like it had been written by a lawyer who had never been alone on a dark porch in his life. The $100 tip never cleared. I know that's not the important part, but I remember it. The payment disappeared after the account was flagged. A week later, I got a call from the detective. They had found something else. The house had no working electricity, which I already knew. The moving light I saw inside wasn't someone walking room to room the way I thought. In some places it had been a real person. In others, it looked like they had rigged flashlights with string and cheap motors, the kind used for Halloween props. One flashlight was attached to a little rotating fan behind a doorway, so the beam swept slowly across the room like someone was pacing. That detail made me sick, because it meant the entire thing was staged. They wanted the house to look occupied, but not too occupied. They wanted just enough movement to make you curious. Just enough wrongness to make you doubt yourself. The detective also asked if I had received any strange messages outside the app. I said no. At the time, that was true. 3 nights later, it wasn't. I was at my apartment, trying to watch TV with the volume low. I hadn't delivered food since the incident. I was applying for warehouse jobs again, retail jobs, anything that didn't involve walking up to strangers' doors after dark. At 12 a.m. exactly, my phone buzzed. Not the delivery app. I had deleted it. A text message from an unknown number. It said, "You still looked." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then another message came in. The tip was for following instructions. I called the detective immediately. By the time he called the number, it was disconnected. They told me it was probably another burner. They told me not to respond. They told me to document everything. That became my life for a while. Screenshot. Report. Lock the door. Check the window. Look at the parking lot before leaving. Walk fast. Don't wear headphones. Don't sit in my car scrolling. Don't let anyone follow me home. A few weeks passed with nothing. Then one morning, I found a folded receipt tucked under my windshield wiper. It was from the burger place. The same burger place. The receipt wasn't for my order. It was blank, like one of those extra kitchen slips. On the back, written in black marker, were 4 words. Do not look back. I moved apartments the next month. I wish I could say the police caught the person. They didn't. At least not in any way they told me. The detective said there were leads, but nothing solid enough. The house was boarded up after that, then eventually demolished. I drove past the road one afternoon almost a year later because I wanted to see it in daylight. I don't know why. Maybe I thought seeing it gone would help. It didn't. The lot was empty except for weeds and a rectangle of dead grass where the house had been. The chain link fence was gone. The mailbox was gone. There was nothing to look at. But I still couldn't make myself stop the car. I kept driving. It's been over 2 years now. I don't deliver food anymore. I work in inventory at a medical supply company. It's boring, steady, and I leave before sunset most days. I don't use my real photo on any public profile. I don't answer unknown numbers. I don't open the door unless I'm expecting someone. I know that might sound paranoid. Maybe it is. But sometimes paranoia is just memory doing its job. There are nights when I still think about that house. Not constantly, but in flashes. The sagging porch, the cold milkshake cup in my hand, the slow sweep of that flashlight through dirty curtains, and the face. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. The thing that scares me most isn't that someone tried to lure me out there. It's how close it came to working. Because the setup was good. That's the part people don't like to admit. It wasn't some masked man jumping out of a closet. It was normal things arranged in the wrong order. A delivery app, a big tip, a quiet road, a strange instruction that made you curious by telling you not to be. And curiosity is such a small thing. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels human. Sometimes you don't realize a trap is a trap until you've already stepped into the middle of it and heard it close behind you. So no, I don't know if you would look. I hope you wouldn't. But I did. And somewhere out there, unless he's dead or in jail under another name, there's a person who knows that about me. He knows I looked, and I know he wanted me to. Story 5. Have you ever passed the same place so many times that it stops feeling like a place at all? It just becomes part of the road. A dark house on the corner, a bent stop sign, a field, a billboard, a closed gas station with weeds pushing through the cracks in the pavement. You don't really look at it anymore. You just know it's there. That's how it was with Miller's Gas and Go. I drove past it 5 nights a week for almost 2 years, and for most of that time, I barely noticed it. It sat off Route 16, about 8 miles outside a small town in northern Ohio called Belhaven. Not much happened there. People worked, raised kids, complained about road salt, and knew way too much about everybody else's business. At the time, I was 34. My name is Aaron. I worked the late shift at a packaging warehouse outside Dayton, usually clocking out around 11:20 at night, sometimes later if a truck came in behind schedule. My wife, Lydia, hated that schedule, not because she was afraid of anything specific. She just didn't like me being on the road that late, especially in winter when the sky got dark before dinner and the highways looked empty by 10. But I liked the drive in a strange way. After 8 hours of forklifts beeping, machines thumping, and supervisors yelling over radios, the quiet felt good. I'd put on some low music, crack the window even when it was cold, and let the night air keep me awake. Most nights, the road home was empty except for deer, semis, and the occasional state trooper hiding in the dark. Then I started seeing the girl. The first time was in late October. I remember because the trees were almost bare, and the fields looked dead and silver under the moon. I was about 10 minutes from home, coming around the long bend before Miller's Gas and Go, when my headlights caught someone standing near the old pumps. A teenage girl. She was standing in the same spot where cars used to pull in for gas, right beside pump number 3. I slowed down without thinking. The station had been closed for years. The sign was still there, but half the letters had fallen off, so it just said Millar's GS. The windows were dusty and covered from the inside with old yellowed posters for cigarettes and energy drinks. The pumps had plastic bags over the handles, ripped and flapping when the wind hit them. Nobody had any reason to be there, especially not a girl at midnight. She looked about 16 or 17, maybe younger. It was hard to tell from the road. She wore a pale hoodie, dark jeans, and white shoes that seemed too clean for that cracked, dirty lot. Her hair hung straight down around her face. She wasn't looking at the building. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was staring at the road. At me. I didn't stop that first night. I slowed down to maybe 20 miles an hour, glanced in the rearview mirror, and then told myself what everyone tells themselves when they see something strange late at night. It's none of my business. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe she lived nearby. Maybe she'd gotten into a fight with her parents or boyfriend and needed space. By the time I got home, I'd almost convinced myself it wasn't weird. Lydia was asleep when I came in, curled on her side with one hand under her cheek. Our dog, Benny, lifted his head from his bed, gave me one tired tail wag, then went back to sleep. I stood in the kitchen drinking water in the dark, looking out the window above the sink, and for some reason I thought about that girl's shoes. White, clean, bright in my headlights. The next night, I saw her again. Same place, same pump, same stillness. This time I was ready for it in that strange way your body gets ready before your mind admits something is wrong. As I approached Miller's, I told myself she wouldn't be there. But she was. She stood near pump 3 with her arms at her sides, her face turned toward the road. I slowed down again. She didn't wave. She didn't step forward. She didn't do anything normal a person would do if they were stranded and saw a car coming. She just watched me pass. I remember feeling annoyed at first. Not scared. Annoyed. Like she had forced me into caring about something I didn't want to care about. When I got home, I mentioned it to Lydia. "There's this girl standing at the old gas station every night," I said, taking off my boots by the back door. Lydia looked up from the couch. She had a blanket over her legs and a mug of tea in both hands. "What girl?" "I don't know. Teenager, maybe. She's there around midnight." Lydia frowned. "At Miller's?" "Yeah. That place has been closed forever." "I know. Did you stop?" "No." She gave me a look. "I know that look. Every married man knows that look. It says, 'I'm not yelling at you, but I have already judged your decision.'" I said, "What was I supposed to do? Pull up to a random teenage girl alone at midnight? That's not exactly going to make me look safe." "That's fair," she said, but she still didn't look comfortable. "Maybe call the police next time." "Over a girl standing somewhere? At midnight, outside an abandoned gas station? Yeah, maybe." I laughed a little, but not because it was funny. More because I wanted it to be. "I'm sure it's nothing," I said. And for a few nights, I tried to make it nothing. But she kept being there. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, always around midnight, always in the same spot. Never on my way to work, only on my way home. Never when other cars passed, at least not that I saw, and never moving. Not once. By the 5th time, I started watching for her before I even reached the bend. My hands would tighten on the steering wheel. The radio would start sounding too loud. The darkness beyond the headlights felt deeper than it should have. Then the station would appear. First the sign, then the pumps, then the girl, standing there, waiting. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but every time I passed, my stomach went cold. One night, I drove past and immediately checked my rearview mirror. She was still there, smaller in the glass, standing under the dead canopy. Then, just as the station started to vanish behind me, she turned her head. Not her body, just her head, slowly, smoothly, following my car as I drove away. I looked back at the road, so fast I almost drifted over the center line. That was the first night I had trouble sleeping. I lay awake beside Lydia, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the heat kick on and off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that pale hoodie in my headlights. The next morning, I told myself I was being ridiculous. Daylight makes cowards feel embarrassed. It takes all the sharp edges off the night. I drove past Miller's on my way to work that afternoon, and in the sunlight, the place looked exactly like what it was, An ugly closed gas station with weeds, broken concrete, and bird crap on the roof. No mystery, no girl, just a dead business on a dying road. I pulled into the lot that afternoon. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself it was real. Maybe I wanted to see footprints, a dropped cigarette, anything. The pavement was cracked, and faded oil stains marked the places where cars used to sit. The pumps were rusted. The store windows were so dirty I could barely see inside, but I could make out empty shelves and a counter. There was a padlock on the front door. I walked around the side of the building and found nothing but old beer cans, a broken milk crate, and a pile of leaves trapped against the wall. No blanket, no backpack, no sign anyone had been hanging around. That bothered me more than it should have. When I got to work, I brought it up to a guy named Mike who'd lived in Bellhaven his whole life. Mike was 50-something, heavy-set, always chewing gum, and always acted like nothing could surprise him. I asked, "You remember Miller's Gas and Go?" He snorted. "Unfortunately." "Why unfortunately?" Place was trash even when it was open. Bad coffee, bad gas, bad bathroom. "Do kids hang around there?" He looked at me. "What kids?" "I keep seeing a girl there at night." Mike stopped chewing for half a second. Then he went right back to it. "A girl? Teenager. Hoodie. Just standing by the pumps." He shrugged. "Probably some runaway or drug thing. She's there almost every night." "Then don't stop." The way he said it made me look at him closer. "What do you mean?" "I mean, don't stop at abandoned places in the middle of the night. You got a wife, right?" "Yeah." "Then go home to her." He turned back to his paperwork and didn't say anything else. I should have listened. But that's the thing about curiosity. It doesn't always feel like curiosity when you're in it. Sometimes it feels like concern. Sometimes it feels like responsibility. Sometimes it feels like you're just trying to make sense of something that keeps scratching at the back of your mind. A few nights later, I called the non-emergency police number from my car after passing her again. The dispatcher was polite but tired. I told her there was a young girl standing outside the closed gas station on Route 16. "Is she in distress?" the dispatcher asked. "I don't know. Is she trying to flag down cars?" "No." "Is she injured?" "Not that I can see." "Can you describe her?" I did. There was a pause. Then the dispatcher said, "We'll have an officer check the area when one is available." When one is available in a town like Bellhaven could mean 10 minutes or 2 hours. The next morning I called again. They said an officer had driven by around 12:35 and didn't find anyone. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because I knew what I'd seen. For a while, I tried taking a different route home. It added almost 15 minutes, looping me past the county fairgrounds and through a stretch of road with no streetlights at all. I did it for 3 nights. On the 4th, I felt stupid and went back to my normal way. She was there. Of course she was. But that night was different. As I approached the station, my headlights swept across her, and I saw her face clearly for the first time. She was looking straight at me, not toward my car, at me. Her face was pale, but not in a ghostly way. Not like in movies. Just pale like someone who'd been standing outside too long in cold weather. Her lips were slightly parted. Her eyes looked dark from the distance, and she had one hand raised, not waving, pointing, at the road ahead of me. I slammed the brakes. My tires chirped on the asphalt, and the seat belt locked hard against my chest. A deer burst out of the ditch, maybe 20 yards in front of my bumper, and flew across the road. If I'd kept going the same speed, I would have hit it. Not maybe, definitely. It was big too. A buck. The kind that comes through your windshield and changes your life. I sat there in the middle of the lane, heart hammering, breath fogging the glass. Then I looked over at the gas station. The girl's hand was down again. She was back in the same position. Still, watching. That night, I didn't tell Lydia right away. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew how it would sound. Maybe because some small part of me didn't want the girl explained away anymore. That's embarrassing to admit, but it's true. I started feeling like she was there for me. Not in a comforting way. More like a warning sign with a face. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. And whatever this was, it had started to feel personal. The next week, Belhaven had one of those cold rains that makes everything look black and shiny. It wasn't storming, just steady rain tapping on my windshield and hissing under the tires. I didn't expect to see her. Nobody would stand outside in that weather. But when I came around the bend, there she was. Same spot. No umbrella. No hood up. Rain falling through her hair and darkening her hoodie. Except when my headlights hit her, I noticed something strange. The rain didn't seem to touch her shoes. They were still bright white. Clean. I slowed to almost a crawl. For 1 second, I thought she smiled. It was small. Barely there. Then the gas station sign above her buzzed. I heard it from inside my car. That old dead sign, the one that hadn't worked in years, gave off a weak flicker of yellow light. Millar's GS. On. Off. On. Off. Then darkness. I drove home so tense my shoulders ached. When I got inside, Lydia was waiting in the kitchen. "You saw her again," she said. I didn't answer fast enough. She put her hands on the counter. "Aaron." I told her everything. The deer. The pointing. The sign flickering. The rain. The shoes. Lydia didn't interrupt. She just listened, and the longer I talked, the more her face changed. When I finished, she said, "I don't want you taking that road anymore. I already tried changing routes." "Then keep changing them." "I know how this sounds," I said, "but I don't think she's trying to hurt me." Lydia stared at me like I'd said something worse than I realized. "You don't know what she is," she said. That sentence stayed with me. You don't know what she is. The next morning, Lydia went digging online. She was better at that than I was. I expected her to find some local legend, some forum post, maybe an old accident. Instead, she found almost nothing. Miller's had closed in 2014 because the owner got sick and the family never reopened it. Before that, it had been a normal gas station. No famous murders. No fire. No missing girl attached to it. There had been accidents on that road, but rural roads always have accidents. Nothing matched. That almost made it worse. If the place had some big tragic story, I could have filed the girl away in my mind as a ghost and left it there. But there was no story, at least not one we could find. A few days later, I stopped at a diner near work before my shift and asked an older waitress about Miller's. Her name tag said Carol, and she had that calm, unimpressed look of someone who'd heard every kind of nonsense before. I asked if she knew anything about the old gas station on Route 16. She glanced at me while filling coffee. "What about it? Anybody ever talk about seeing someone there?" Her hand paused, just for a second. Then she kept pouring. "People say things." "What kind of things?" She set the pot down. "You from around here?" "Not originally." "That explains it." She walked away before I could ask more. When she came back with my food, she didn't look at me. She just said, "Some places hold on to people." I waited for her to explain. She didn't. I said, "Was there a girl?" Carol looked toward the diner windows. Outside, afternoon traffic rolled by under a gray sky. Then she said, "There was always a girl somewhere." That was all I got out of her. By then, I knew I should stop asking questions. I knew it, but knowing doesn't always change what you do. The night I finally stopped for her was December 3rd. I remember the date because it was the first real snow of the season. Not a blizzard, just enough to dust the fields and make the road shoulders glow under the headlights. Work had been awful. A conveyor belt jammed, a pallet split open, and our manager kept us almost 40 minutes late. By the time I clocked out, I was exhausted and irritated in that numb way you get when you've been awake too long. I thought about taking the long route. I really did. But the roads were slick, I was tired, and my normal route was more direct. So I took Route 16. The world was quiet. Snow has a way of swallowing sound. Even my engine seemed softer than usual. When I reached the bend before Miller's, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. Then I saw her. But she wasn't by pump 3. She was in the road, not fully in my lane. Just on the white line at the edge, close enough that I had to brake hard. My headlights flooded over her. Pale hoodie, dark jeans, white shoes. Her hair moved slightly in the wind. I stopped maybe 15 feet away. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. I gripped the wheel so hard my fingers hurt. I should have driven around her. I should have called the police. I should have done anything except what I did. But she looked so small standing there in the snow, and so young. I put the car in park. The sound of that gear shift felt too loud. I cracked my window. "Hey," I called. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer. Snow drifted between us. I said louder, "Do you need help?" Still nothing. My phone was in the cup holder. I picked it up, ready to call 911, but then she turned and walked toward the gas station. Not fast, not scared, just calmly, like she expected me to follow. I whispered, "Nope," but my hand was already on the door handle. I don't have a good excuse for that. I've gone over it for years. I've tried to make myself sound smarter in the story, like I was investigating or doing the right thing. The truth is, I was tired, confused, and afraid in a way that made me stupid. I stepped out of the car. The cold hit me immediately. My breath smoked in front of my face. Snow crunched under my work boots. "Wait," I said. She stopped under the dead canopy beside pump 3. Her back was to me. The gas station windows were black behind her. I took a few steps closer and kept my phone in my hand. "Listen," I said, trying to sound calm. "I'm not going to hurt you. I can call someone. Do you have parents nearby?" She turned around. That was the closest I had ever been to her. Her face was ordinary. That's what scared me most. She didn't look like a monster. She didn't look dead. She looked like a tired teenage girl waiting for a ride after school. Her cheeks were pale from the cold. Her eyes were dark brown. There was a small freckle near her left eye. She smiled. Not wide, not happy, just enough to show she heard me. Then she said, "You're the first one who can see me before it happens." My whole body went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. "What?" I said. She looked past me toward the road. "You have to leave now." I took one step back. "What happens?" She didn't answer. Behind her, inside the gas station, something clicked. It was sharp and clear, like a breaker switching on. Then the lights came on. Not all at once. One flickered over the counter. Another buzzed above the aisle. Then the fluorescent strips inside the old store blinked alive in weak, sickly sections. The windows, which had been black for years, filled with yellow light. And I saw people standing behind the glass. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, old people, teenagers, a man in a work uniform, a woman holding a little boy's hand, a trucker with a cap pulled low, a girl in a red jacket, faces shoulder to shoulder, crowded inside that abandoned store like they had been waiting in the dark. All of them staring out. At me. I couldn't breathe. My heart sank into my stomach as the car door clicked shut behind me in the wind, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I backed away so fast I almost slipped. The girl by the pump whispered, "Run." A horn blasted from the road. I spun around. Headlights were coming straight at my parked car. A large box truck was drifting over the center line, tires hissing on the snowy road. It wasn't slowing down. It was angled wrong, sliding, too fast for the bend. For one stupid second, I just stared. Then I ran. Not gracefully. Not like in movies. My boots skidded on the snow. My phone flew out of my hand. I heard myself make some awful sound that was half gasp, half shout. The truck hit my car. The impact was so loud it seemed to split the night in half. Metal folded. Glass burst. My car was shoved sideways off the road and into the edge of the gas station lot, spinning once before slamming into one of the old pumps. I fell hard on my hands and knees. For a second, everything was ringing. The truck kept going. It jackknifed across the road, slammed into the ditch, and stopped at an angle with steam or smoke rising from the front. I pushed myself up, shaking so badly my legs barely worked. My car was destroyed. The driver's side was crushed inward, exactly where I would have been sitting. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I stumbled backward through the snow. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Then I remembered the girl. I turned toward pump 3. She was gone. The gas station lights were off again. The windows were black. No people. No crowd. No faces. Nothing. Just the old building in the snow. I stood there with blood on my palms from where I'd fallen, staring at the dark glass, trying to understand what had just happened. Then I heard a groan from the truck. That snapped me back. I found my phone near the curb. The screen was cracked, but it worked. I called 911 with hands so numb I could barely press the numbers. The next 15 minutes are blurry. I remember the dispatcher telling me to stay back from the vehicles. I remember telling her there had been a girl. I remember saying the gas station lights had come on, then realizing how insane that sounded and stopping mid-sentence. A man in a pickup pulled over and ran toward me. "You okay?" he shouted. I just pointed at the truck. The driver survived. He had a head injury and kept saying he didn't know what happened. Later, the police told me he'd likely fallen asleep or blacked out. No alcohol, no drugs, just bad weather, fatigue, and the wrong second on the wrong curve. One officer told me I was lucky I'd gotten out of my car. Lucky. That word made me laugh, and once I started laughing, I couldn't stop. Not because it was funny. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when your brain refuses to hold any more fear. The officer wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and asked why I had stopped. I looked toward the gas station. "There was someone in the road," I said. "What someone?" "A girl." He followed my gaze. The lot was empty except for my wrecked car, the broken pump, and snow blowing across the pavement. The officer's expression changed, but only a little. "What did she look like?" I told him. "Pale hoodie, dark jeans, white shoes." He wrote it down. Then he asked, "Did she speak to you?" I hesitated. "Yes." "What did she say?" I looked at the black windows of the gas station. Then I lied. "I don't remember." Lydia got there before the tow truck. She ran across the road in boots and pajama pants under her coat, and when she saw my car, she covered her mouth with both hands. I'd never seen her look like that. Not angry, not crying, just hollowed out. She grabbed me and held on so tight it hurt. "What happened?" she kept saying. "Aaron, what happened?" I couldn't answer. Not there. Not with the flashing lights painting the gas station red and blue. Not with the officers walking around the wreck, taking pictures. Not with that old building watching from the dark. At home, I told her everything. The girl in the road. What she said. The lights. The people behind the glass. Lydia sat on the edge of our bed and listened without moving. When I finished, she said, "You're never driving that road again." I said, "I know." She looked at me. "No, I mean never." And I didn't. For a while, I tried to go back to normal. Insurance handled the car. My boss gave me 3 days off. People at work asked about the crash, and I told them the simple version. Truck lost control. I got out in time. That was enough for most people. Mike, the guy who had told me not to stop, didn't ask questions in front of anyone. But on my first night back, he found me alone near the loading dock. He said, "You saw her up close, didn't you?" I looked at him. He wasn't chewing gum. That alone made me nervous. I said, "What do you know?" Mike looked out across the dark lot where trailers sat in rows under orange lights. "My brother was a deputy here in the 90s, he said. "He used to talk about that stretch. Not officially. Just after a few beers." "What about it?" Mike rubbed his jaw. "Accidents. More than there should be. People swerving for things that weren't there. People getting out of cars right before wrecks. People saying they saw someone near Miller's. A girl? Sometimes." I felt a pressure building behind my eyes. "Who is she?" Mike shook his head. "That's the thing. Nobody knows. There has to be a record. Maybe there is. Maybe not here." I told him about the people in the windows. He went pale in a way I didn't like. Then he said, "My brother said something once. He said the station wasn't haunted by who died there. It was haunted by who almost did. That didn't make sense to me at first. Then it made too much sense. I started looking into old accidents along Route 16. Not just at Miller's, but the whole bend around it. Newspaper archives, county reports, whatever I could find online. There were more than I expected. A school bus that slid off the road in 1988. No deaths, but several kids hurt. A family van hit by a drunk driver in 1996. Somehow everyone survived. A trucker who jackknifed it in 2003 and missed a stopped car by inches. A woman in 2011 who claimed a young girl stepped into the road and made her brake moments before a tire blew on her SUV. Not all of them mentioned Miller's. Not all were at midnight. But enough of them were close. Enough of them had strange details. The creepiest thing I found was a tiny article from a local paper dated November 1979. It was about a missing girl named Emily Carter, 16 years old, last seen walking along Route 16 after leaving a friend's house. She never made it home. There was no photo in the online archive, just a few lines. The article said police searched the area near what was then a small service station owned by another family, long before it became Miller's. They found one white tennis shoe in the ditch. Nothing else. Emily Carter was never found. I sat in front of my laptop for a long time after reading that. Lydia came into the room and saw my face. "What?" she asked. I turned the screen toward her. She read it. Then she whispered, "Stop looking." I wanted to, but part of me couldn't stop thinking about the people behind the glass. Who were they? People she saved? People she couldn't? People still waiting for their turn? I don't know. A week after the crash, I drove near Miller's in daylight with Lydia beside me. Not on Route 16. I took a back road that came out behind it. I told myself I needed to see the place one more time. Lydia didn't like it, but she came because she didn't want me going alone. The gas station looked worse in winter daylight. My wrecked car was gone. The damaged pump had been taped off. Tire marks still scarred the snow and dirt where the truck had slid. We sat there in Lydia's car without speaking. Then she said, "There." She pointed at the front window. At first I didn't see it. Then I did. On the inside of the dusty glass, someone had drawn a line with a finger. Not words, not a symbol. Just a single vertical mark, like a tally. I got out before Lydia could stop me. "Aaron," she said sharply. I walked to the window. The mark was fresh, clean through the dust from the inside. I cupped my hands around my eyes and looked in. The store was empty. Shelves, counter, dust, darkness. Then, in the reflection of the glass, I saw someone standing behind me. A girl in a pale hoodie. I spun around so hard I stumbled. No one was there. Lydia shouted my name from the car. I backed away from the window and got in without saying a word. We drove home. That night, I dreamed I was standing inside the gas station. The lights were buzzing overhead. The air smelled like old coffee, damp cardboard, and gasoline. People stood shoulder to shoulder in every aisle, but none of them spoke. At the front window, the girl stood with her back to me. Emily, I guess, though I can't prove that was her name. She lifted one hand and drew another tally mark in the dust. When she turned around, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking through me, like there was someone else behind my eyes. I woke up gasping. Benny was growling at the bedroom door. Not barking, growling low with his body stiff. The hallway outside our room was dark. I reached for the lamp, but Lydia grabbed my wrist. "Listen," she whispered. At first, I heard nothing. Then there it was, a soft sound from downstairs. Not a crash, not a voice. A click, like a light switch. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I got out of bed slowly and picked up the baseball that we kept behind the door. Benny crept beside me, growling. Lydia stayed behind me with her phone, ready to call 911. We checked the upstairs first. Nothing. Then I walked down the stairs, one step at a time, my bare feet cold against the wood. The kitchen light was on. We never left it on. The back door was shut and locked. Windows locked. No footprints, no broken glass, no sign of anyone inside. But on the kitchen table, there was something that made Lydia start crying. A white tennis shoe. Small, old, stained with dirt, resting neatly in the center of the table. Neither of us touched it. The police came. They checked the doors, windows, basement, garage. They found no signs of forced entry. One officer kept asking if we were sure the shoe hadn't already been in the house somehow. Lydia nearly lost it on him. I don't blame the officer. What was he supposed to think? Two adults saying a decades-old missing girl's shoe appeared in their locked kitchen? They took it anyway. I never heard anything back. Maybe they tested it. Maybe they threw it into evidence and forgot about it. Maybe it disappeared before anyone could explain it. I don't know. That was when we decided to leave Belhaven. Not immediately. Life doesn't move that cleanly. We had bills, work, a lease, family nearby. But something had changed in the house after that night. Lydia wouldn't stay alone anymore. I slept badly. Benny started refusing to go near the kitchen after dark. And me? I kept seeing pale shapes in windows. Not every night. Not even clearly. Just enough to make me doubt myself. A hoodie in the reflection of the TV. A face-shaped smudge in the dark kitchen window. White shoes at the edge of the driveway that vanished when headlights passed. I stopped working late shifts. I took a pay cut to move to days. I stopped driving rural roads after dark unless I had no choice. 3 months later, we moved 2 counties over. For a while, things got better. No strange noises. No shoes. No girl. I started to convince myself that whatever had happened was tied to that place. Maybe some roads collect pain. Maybe some buildings become containers for things people never got to finish. Maybe I had been pulled close to something that didn't actually want me. Then, about a year after the crash, I got a call from Mike. We hadn't talked much since I left the warehouse. He didn't do small talk, so when I saw his name on my phone, I knew something was wrong. He said, "You sitting down?" I was in my garage sorting tools. "What happened?" "They tore down Miller's." I didn't say anything. He continued, "County finally pushed it through. Building was unsafe. They demolished it yesterday." I waited. Mike breathed out slowly. "They found something." My hand tightened around the phone. "What?" "Behind the back wall. Old crawl space or storage area. Bones." I sat down on an overturned bucket. Mike said, "They haven't identified them yet, but they said it's more than one person." For a few seconds, the garage seemed to tilt around me. "How many?" "Don't know. More than one." I closed my eyes and saw the people behind the glass, shoulder to shoulder, waiting. Mike said, "There's something else." I didn't want there to be something else. "What?" "After they tore it down, a worker found writing on the inside of one of the front windows. Like in the dust." I already knew. My mouth went dry. Mike said, "A bunch of tally marks." I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Lydia after I told her. The news covered the discovery for a few weeks. Human remains found during demolition of old gas station. Investigation ongoing. Possible link to decades-old missing persons cases. They eventually identified one of them as Emily Carter, 16 years old, missing since 1979. The others took longer. Some were never named publicly. There were rumors, of course. Belhaven was good at rumors. People said the old service station owner, before Miller, had been questioned back then. People said his son was strange. People said police mishandled things. People said a lot. But nothing brought those people back. And nothing explained why I saw them standing inside that store before the crash. A detective called me once because my name was in the report from the accident. He asked what I had seen that night. This time I told the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I told him about the girl in the road. I told him she warned me. I told him the lights came on and I saw people in the windows. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Mr. Hayes, do you believe what you saw was real?" I looked across the living room at Lydia. She was folding laundry with the TV muted, pretending not to listen. "Yes," I said. "I do." The detective sighed, not in a rude way, more like a tired man carrying too many impossible things. Then he said, "You're not the first person to tell me that." He wouldn't say more. That was 6 years ago. I live in a different town now. I have a different job. Lydia and I have a daughter, and when she's old enough to drive, I already know I'll be the annoying dad who checks her tires, tracks the weather, and tells her not to stop for anyone on a dark road unless she's on the phone with 911. I know how that sounds. I used to roll my eyes at people who lived scared. I don't anymore, because fear isn't always weakness. Sometimes fear is memory doing its job. Even now, I avoid old gas stations at night. If a place looks abandoned, I don't pull in. If someone is standing alone where no one should be, I keep driving and call for help from somewhere safe. And every once in a while, usually in winter, I'll be driving home late from some family thing or emergency errand, and the road will get too quiet. The radio will lose signal. The fields will go flat and silver under the moon. And for a split second, I'll see her again in my mind. Pale hoodie, dark jeans, white shoes, standing under dead lights, staring at the road like she's waiting for the next person who can see her before it happens. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I don't know if Emily saved me because she wanted to. I don't know if the people behind the glass were victims, warnings, or something worse. I only know that if I had stayed in my car for 10 more seconds, my wife would have gotten a very different phone call that night. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing something saw it coming, and it had been waiting there every night, trying to decide whether I was worth warning.